Chapter 661. Sun Qi looked hesitantly at Jiang Yuqing, who was stained with blood. But eldest young master, you, go. Jiang Yuqing was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Sun Qi's heart skipped a beat. Yes. He said to the two guards behind him, go after Xiamu immediately. And you, immediately bring people to lock down the Jiang mansion. No one is allowed to enter or leave. The two guards hurriedly complied and left separately. Sun Qi also jumped out of the window and looked in the direction where Xiamu left. At the same time he took out a bamboo tube and pulled it hard. Bang! A firework instantly exploded in the sky. This was something that would only be used in an emergency. Sun Qi usually followed Jiang Yuqing and almost never used it. He didn't expect that it would come in handy in the Jiang mansion today. Soon, the guards of the Jiang mansion rushed over from all directions. In a short while, hundreds of people had gathered, and none of them were weak. Sun Qi quickly said, someone sneaked up on eldest young master just now and has fled outside. Everyone, follow me immediately to find him. Everyone was shocked. Someone actually dared to sneak up on eldest young master in the Jiang mansion? How much guts did he have? Did he not want to live anymore? That person is thin and small. He's wearing blackish-gray clothes and half an iron mask on his face. His face is severely burned. Once anyone finds this person, you must capture him immediately. Yes. Under Sun Qi's lead, everyone followed out. On the other side, the people waiting in Wutong Garden were also shocked. What was wrong with Xiamu that he actually wanted to go against eldest young master? Chidea was also stunned. Impossible. It's impossible. With Xiamu's courage and strength, it was impossible for him to do such a thing. At this moment, the guards who left had already led a group of people to lock down Wutong Garden. No one was allowed to enter or leave as they pleased. An old man hurried over. When they saw him, the guards took the initiative to make way. Elder Feng. This person was a celestial physician who was specially worshipped in the mansion. He was also eldest young master's trusted aide, Feng Xuanhuan. Feng Xuanhuan hurriedly entered the room and saw the pale and furious Jiang Yuqing at first glance. His expression changed slightly and he quickly went forward. Eldest young master. How are you? Jiang Yuqing let go of his hand. Feng Xuanhuan saw a bloody hole in his lower abdomen, and beside Jiang Yuqing's feet was a bloody writing brush. This must have been caused by that person just now. Feng Xuanhuan was shocked. He quickly took out a medicinal pill and fed it to Jiang Yuqing. At the same time he carefully treated his wound. Eldest young master's body has just recovered. I'm afraid that he will have to recuperate for a period of time again. How could that person be so accurate? He actually hit that exact spot. The guard hurriedly admitted his mistake, but he was helpless in his heart. Lord Sun, that Xiamu's movements are agile. I only saw him jump over that wall and completely disappeared. Sun Qi looked in the direction he pointed and knew that Xiamu had already escaped from the Jiang residence. Wutong Garden was very close to the back door and there were very few guards. It wasn't impossible for that person to escape quickly. Split up and chase after him. Now that the road is covered in snow, I don't believe that he won't leave any traces. Yes. On the other side, Xiamu quickly escaped from the Jiang residence and walked along a small path. Now that the city was covered in snow, his clothes were too conspicuous. With his speed and concealment, it wouldn't be a problem for him to hide for a while, but those people from the Jiang residence would definitely not let him go. Therefore he had to think of a complete solution. At this moment, the sound of a carriage suddenly came from behind. Xiamu was stunned and looked back. Why would there be a carriage at this time? And there was no one riding the horse. Swoosh swoosh. The sound of something tearing through the air could be heard. Several silhouettes were rapidly approaching this place. He definitely can't run too far. Immediately seal off this place. Search carefully. Even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground, you have to find him. Yes. It's Jiang Yuqing. He actually chased after me? Hearing his approaching voice, Xiamu made up his mind and turned around to jump toward the carriage. However, just as he reached in front of it, the curtain was lifted from the inside. An arm reached out and quickly pulled Xiamu in. Dong. Xiamu fell into a warm and broad embrace. Xiamu turned around and jumped up, locking the person's wrist on the wall of the carriage. He pinned the other party down. How dare you? Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly smelled a familiar cold fragrance. The man who was tightly pinned down chuckled softly. Are you in such a hurry? Digression, it's over. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. However, Rongxiu's hand on her waist did not loosen. With a slight movement of his fingers, Chu Liyue's belt was silently undone and slipped off her body. Rongxiu. Chu Liyue gasped and looked at him in surprise. Rongxiu's movements were extremely fast. He held her waist with one hand and quickly removed the layer of outer clothing on her body with the other. Rip! When the outer clothing fell, it was actually torn apart. Chu Liyue was even more puzzled. What was Rongxiu doing? Rongxiu quickly put away the layer of black and gray outer clothing, and also quickly undid the red outer clothing that Chu Liyue was originally wearing. Chu Liyue grabbed his wrist. Just as she was about to say something, a cold and harsh voice suddenly came from outside. Stop. The horses sensed danger and stopped in response. They pawed the ground uneasily, raising snowflakes. Several auras quickly approached. Chu Liyue was slightly shocked. It was Jiang Yuqing and his people. Who is inside the carriage? Jiang Yuqing's cold and harsh voice came from outside. Rongxiu didn't seem to hear at all. He held Chu Liyue in his arms and lowered his head to kiss her deeply. He held her slender waist with one hand, and quietly removed her hair tie with the other hand. Her black hair fell down. Hearing that there was no movement in the carriage, Jiang Yuqing became more and more impatient. In this world of ice and snow, the road was full of snow. Most people would have already gone home and wouldn't stay outside at all. How could someone travel in a carriage? Furthermore, there was no one driving the carriage. It was only being pulled by two horses. There was obviously a problem. The Jiang mansion is investigating the assassin. Anyone who passes through here will be investigated. The person in the carriage had better cooperate. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. The Jiang mansion's guards who came with him had already surrounded the carriage. The cold wind whistled and a strong pressure spread out. The air seemed to be condensed. The person in the carriage still didn't react. Jiang Yuqing's eyes narrowed dangerously. This carriage looked spacious and luxurious, but there was no sign of an aristocratic family. Presumably, it wasn't someone of power. If that was the case, there was nothing to worry about. Besides, even if it was someone with a high status, Jiang Yuqing wouldn't be afraid. If he wanted to investigate someone, who in Xiling City could stop him? Thinking of this, he walked forward with a cold face. With a flick of the knife, he lifted the curtain abruptly. A black streak flashed before his eyes. It was like a huge black feather flying past. Jiang Yuqing frowned and looked inside the carriage. With one look, he was suddenly stunned. There were two people in the carriage. A man in a white brocade robe was sitting inside, and he was holding a woman tightly in his arms. The woman was wrapped in a black cloak from top to bottom. Only her head could be seen leaning against the man's chest. From Jiang Yuqing's perspective, he could only see the woman's slightly messy, soft, glossy black hair. Jiang Yuqing only needed to look at the man to know what the situation was. Recalling the flash of black he saw just now, it should be this man who pulled the cloak and wrapped the woman up in a hurry. He didn't expect to run into such a scene. Jiang Yuqing's face was a little dark. On the contrary, after a flash of displeasure from being interrupted flashed across the man's face, his eyes quickly became clear. Although there was still some intoxication between his eyebrows like 3 parts of spring, he obviously understood what was happening. He calmly buttoned up the open collar, and bent down to whisper something softly in the woman's ear. Only then did he raise his head to look at Jiang Yuqing again. Jiang Mansion? Then you must be eldest young Master Jiang? Jiang Yuqing looked the man up and down suspiciously. Even if he was a man, he had to admit that the man in white in front of him had a noble and perfect appearance, and a cold and noble temperament. He was really like a banished immortal. He himself was one of the top few young masters in Xiling City, and even had the title of Xiling's most handsome man for many years. But in front of this man in white, he was instantly inferior. If he had seen such a person before, he would definitely have an impression. In other words, this man in white was very likely not from Xiling. Thinking of this, he immediately became vigilant and asked coldly, "Who are you?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 663. The man in white smiled faintly. I'm Rongxiu. Jiang Yuqing quickly went through his mind, but found that he didn't know this name, nor had he heard of it before. I should get off the carriage and greet young Master Jiang, but I'm afraid that's not possible in this situation. I hope young Master Jiang can forgive me. Rongxiu's voice was low with a hint of laziness. It was an apology, but when it came out of his mouth, there was a sense of laziness and leisure. It was as if he didn't take Jiang Yuqing seriously at all. Jiang Yuqing suppressed his anger. You know me, but I've never seen you before. Rong Xiu's thin lips curled into a smile. Rong Xiu is just an ordinary person. It's normal that young Master Jiang hasn't seen me before. Jiang Yuqing looked at the woman tightly hugged in his arms. Who's the person in your arms? Raise your head. Rong Xiu raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly, hugged the woman even tighter, and said with a faint smile, I heard that young Master Jiang is tracking down the assassin. It's understandable that you want to find someone. But, the two of us have been in this carriage all this time. We really have nothing to do with the so-called assassin. We'll know whether it's related or not after investigating. Jiang Yuqing rudely interrupted Rong Xiu's words, his eyes still fixed on the woman. Raise your head. It's snowing heavily. These two people should have just stayed at home. Why did they have to travel outside in a carriage? He became more and more suspicious, and even the way he looked at the woman was a little fierce. The smile on Rong Xiu's face faded. Just as he was about to speak, the woman in his arms suddenly grabbed the lapel of his chest, moved her head and spoke. Rong Xiu, since young Master Jiang is looking for the assassin, he naturally can't miss one. It's okay to just take a look. Hearing this somewhat familiar voice, Jiang Yuqing frowned. This seemed to be, just as this thought flashed through his mind, he saw the woman in Rong Xiu's arms raise her head and look over. A beautiful face appeared before his eyes. It was Chu Luiyue. At this moment, her entire body was tightly wrapped in the black cloak, revealing only her snow-white little face. Her cheeks were stained with 2 traces of crimson, and her eyes were like limpid autumn waters, rippling with light, as if they could suck in a person's soul. Her cherry lips were bright red, moist and full, like a rose that was about to bloom. The flowing light in her eyes was like a faintly discernible silk thread, lingering with sorrow. The icy snow that filled the sky instantly lost its luster, leaving behind only this unparalleled beauty. Jiang Yuqing stared blankly at the woman in front of him. Of course he recognized this face, but it also seemed very unfamiliar. If it weren't for him, it might not have been easy to find such a good carriage quickly. Just 2 short sentences, but they contained too much information. Chu Luiyue widened his eyes slightly and glanced at him. Rong Xiu actually asked Mu Qinghe to help find this carriage? When did the two of them meet? How did Mu Qinghe agree to help? Jiang Yuqing was also shocked. He looked at Chu Luiyue. Did the third princess summon you to the palace today? Why did she look for you? Chu Luiyue nodded and said, it was just a casual conversation. It was just a casual chat. Later, third princess was busy looking after His Majesty, so I came back. Looking at Chu Luiyue's expression, it seemed that nothing had happened. However, Jiang Yuqing still felt uneasy. Xuanhuan was too sudden. The two of them talked so much today, but she didn't mention this matter at all. Also, Mu Qinghe asked him to investigate the residence on 6 Cloud Street. How did it suddenly have anything to do with Rong Xiu? But no matter what, Rong Xiu's words were reasonable. Moreover, whether it was Chu Luiyue entering the palace or Mu Qinghe helping, it couldn't be faked. It was almost impossible to pick out anything strange or wrong with these 2 explanations. Jiang Yuqing's suspicions gradually disappeared, and he finally took a step back. Alright, it's all a misunderstanding. Since it has been clarified, you can leave. As he spoke, he waved his hand, and the guards behind him immediately stepped aside. The horse seemed to have a mind of its own as it raised its hooves and walked forward. However, just as it moved, Jiang Yuqing suddenly thought of something and quickly stepped forward to stop the carriage. He stared at the two of them closely, full of scrutiny and oppression, and asked in a deep voice, No, the third princess went to the Jiang mansion early. Chu Luiyue should have left the palace long ago. Why are you still on the road after spending so much time? Chu Luiyue's hand slightly tightened. Then he heard the man beside him chuckle and say with a faint smile, This time, it's not too long, is it? Is it too long in eldest young Master Jiang's opinion? Digression, Rong Xiu, murderous and heartless. I'm worried that these 2 chapters are sensitive and blocked, so I'll post them first. The rest of the update will continue. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 664. Chu Luiyue swore with her life that Jiang Yuqing's face darkened for a moment. She silently glanced at Rong Xiu. What a ruthless sentence. What a vicious man. She liked it. Without waiting for Jiang Yuqing to get angry, Rong Xiu continued. When you are with your beloved, even if you are talking about the most boring things in the world, it is also the most interesting thing. Naturally, you will forget the time. He reached out and slowly combed Chu Luiyue's hair. I haven't seen you, for a long time, and I miss her very much. I'm afraid that it's not enough for me to see her. How can I be in the mood to look at the time? His voice was low and gentle, and his deep eyes looked at Chu Luiyue as if he was looking at the most precious treasure in the world. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be hit by something soft, and it overflowed with sourness and sweetness. She leaned into Rongxiu's arms and obediently put her cheek on his chest, feeling at ease. With this man around, he would naturally help her solve all her problems. She didn't need to worry about anything. She just needed to watch and listen well. Jiang Yuqing clenched his fists. Because of the force, his knuckles turned white, and the veins on his forehead bulged. Rongxiu's words didn't leave any room for rebuttal, and the scene of the two of them snuggling together was inexplicably dazzling. "Let's go." He took a deep breath and turned to leave quickly. Many guards immediately chased after him. Soon the group of figures disappeared from the street. The surroundings finally quieted down, and the oppressive aura completely dissipated. The curtain was put down, covering everything outside. Chu Luiyue closed her eyes and slowly exhaled. Almost, if Rongxiu hadn't appeared in time, it would have been difficult for her to escape unscathed today. Jiang Yuqing was a vengeful person. She heard him, so he would definitely pursue it to the end. In the following days, the West Hill would probably be lively. "Now you know fear?" Rongxiu raised his eyebrows. "You were bold when you did it." Chu Luiyue was teased by him, but she didn't think much of it. Instead, she asked with interest, "Did you really come out today to pick me up? Or, did you deliberately come here to wait?" Rongxiu didn't deny it and smiled. Strictly speaking, it was indeed both. Initially, he was rather worried when he heard that xuanhuan had summoned Chu Luiyue to the palace. Since Mu Qinghe was there, he asked him to help. Of course, it wasn't that he couldn't find a good carriage. It was just that he didn't like Mu Qinghe. In the end, he didn't manage to fetch Chu Luiyue. Finally, he found out that she was in the Jiang residence. So he drove the carriage here. This was right, was Cheng, was Xiu, was Yuqing, as Rongxiu was. Even if Jiang Yuqing had doubts, there was nothing he could do if he couldn't find any flaws. Chu Luiyue glanced at his expression and guessed something. She was somewhat similar to that person. Jiang Yuqing also knew. Other than the first time they met, when he saw that bright and brilliant smile that shocked him for a long time, he had basically gotten used to seeing that face after that. The two of them were as different as clouds and mud, and there was no comparison at all. Especially that glance outside the zither room in Thousand View Garden. He had already completely separated the two of them in his heart. He thought that the throbbing in the depths of his heart had completely dissipated. But when he saw her again today, he realized that it wasn't like that. Chu Luiyue seemed to have a strange and subtle temperament that always made him involuntarily want to take another look. She was similar to that person but also different. Relatively speaking, although Chu Luiyue's background wasn't as noble, and her temperament and self-cultivation couldn't be compared to that person's, she had a more vigorous vitality. That was the tenacity in her bones. Those who hadn't experienced hardship wouldn't have such a feeling. In other words, that person was like the sun in the clouds that he could only look up to. Even if he had a marriage agreement with her, he always felt that there was something between them. Sometimes he even felt that he couldn't even reach the corner of her clothes. But Chu Luiyue was different. She was similarly lively and beautiful, but also within his reach. What made Jiang Yuqing feel at a loss and faintly flustered was that Chu Luiyue? He seemed to be unable to resist. Eldest young master. Digression, Jiang Yuqing, that's a woman within my reach. Rongxiu, no, that's the road to the underworld that's within your reach. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 665. Jiang Yuqing came back to his senses. The guard beside him looked at him worriedly. Eldest young master, are you all right? Ever since the carriage left just now, eldest young master had been absent-minded and silent all the way. It really looked a little strange. Could it be that eldest young master's injuries were too serious? Jiang Yuqing's face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. What can happen to this young master? Continue to search. Yes. Jiang Yuqing raised his head. It was still snowing and the entire Shilling City was covered with a thick layer of snow. If the snow was getting heavier, it would be more convenient for Xiamu to escape. He lifted his foot and quickly moved forward. Jiang Yuqing spent a lot of manpower and resources. He almost turned half of Shilling City upside down, but he still couldn't find Xiamu. He couldn't even find a trace of him. This person seemed to have disappeared into thin air. When night fell, Jiang Yuqing returned to the mansion. However, he sent a group of people outside to search. In the study, Feng Xuanhuan treated Jiang Yuqing's wounds again and checked his pulse. His face was solemn. Eldest young master, your body was seriously injured some time ago, and you used a special method to hide your aura. The damage to your body is too great. In addition to today's injuries, if you don't rest well, I'm afraid that you will suffer from a chronic illness in the future. Jiang Yuqing closed his eyes. His body was injured and he had been running around outside for a day. His face looked a little pale. The gloomy mood in his heart was still hovering and couldn't dissipate. It made him frown. Seeing him like this, Feng Xuanhuan couldn't help but sigh. This old man is not an alarmist. Eldest young master, this old man knows your body best. You really can't torture yourself anymore. If it affects your future cultivation, then the gains won't make up for the losses. These words finally made Jiang Yuqing open his eyes. Is that serious? Feng Xuanhuan nodded seriously. So, during this period of time, don't worry too much. If there's anything, try to leave it to the subordinates. Have a good rest. Jiang Yuqing waved his hand irritably. Easy for you to say. Xuanhuan was about to start making arrangements for that matter, and even the wedding would be put on the agenda soon after. Where would he find the time to rest? Feng Xuanhuan was about to persuade him again when he heard Jiang Yuqing say, "You can go back first. I want to be alone for a while." Feng Xuanhuan sighed in his heart. He could only turn around and leave. When he reached the door, he bumped into Sun Qi, who had just returned in a hurry. Sun Qi bowed to Feng Xuanhuan and then quickly walked in. Feng Xuanhuan looked back, shook his head and left. In the room, Sun Qi walked up to Jiang Yuqing with snow on his head. "Young master, I've already gone to Xiamu's residence, but I couldn't find him." Qi Dai had no choice but to say, "This? He has always been loyal to the eldest young master. He wouldn't do this to you." Jiang Yuqing gave Sun Qi a look. Sun Qi immediately stepped forward and slapped Qi Dai hard. Slap. "Tell the truth. If you lie, I'll cut off your tongue." Qi Dai lost 2 teeth and his mouth was full of blood. He opened his mouth, but something seemed to be stuck in his throat and he couldn't speak. Xiamu had saved his life. He couldn't. Jiang Yuqing narrowed his eyes. How could he not see through Qi Dai's thoughts? Such stubbornness was obviously to protect Xiamu. He suddenly asked, "Since you don't admit it, then I won't pursue this matter. Let me ask you, Xiamu. Why did his cultivation suddenly regress to the peak of the 4th stage?" Qi Dai was suddenly stunned. He raised his head and looked at Jiang Yuqing in a daze. Peak of the 4th stage? Impossible, he's still in the same realm as before? Although his body was seriously injured after returning and he couldn't advance no matter how hard he cultivated, he definitely didn't return to the peak of the 4th stage. A white light suddenly flashed in Jiang Yuqing's mind. He immediately stood up and stared at Qi Dai. "Is what you said true? Are you sure that he's not at the peak of the 4th stage?" Qi Dai didn't know why he was like this and only nodded blankly. "Yes. Eldest young master, is there something wrong?" Jiang Yuqing's expression changed quickly. So that's how it is. That Xiamu was a fake. During this period of time, did you notice anything different about Xiamu? He asked anxiously. Qi Dai thought for a long time and shook his head hesitantly. "No. He's always been like that." Jiang Yuqing instantly thought of the appearance of that Xiamu. He was thin and small, his face was full of scars and he wore half an iron mask. Most importantly, he was mute. Such a person was extremely easy to disguise. Even if he silently changed into another person, who would be able to see the change when he stood there silently with his head lowered? Jiang Yuqing gradually clenched his fists. What he could confirm now was that the Xiamu who injured him today wasn't the real Xiamu. As for the real Xiamu, he had probably been dealt with long ago. Unfortunately, he couldn't confirm when this person was changed, and he didn't know who would pretend to be Xiamu and deliberately sneak into the Jiang residence. As long as that person removed his disguise and changed into his own appearance, who would know? Given the current situation, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to investigate this matter. Jiang Yuqing paced back and forth in the room in extreme frustration. As he walked, he kept looking at the brush on the table. Who could have such strength and movement skills? Suddenly he stopped in his tracks. Peak of the 4th stage. Wasn't Chu Luiyue the one? Mobile users, please browse and read. Chapter 667. A burst of burning pain suddenly came from his lower abdomen. Jiang Yuqing frowned and his face instantly turned pale. Sun Qi immediately stepped forward and asked nervously, "Eldest young master, what's wrong?" Jiang Yuqing waved his hand. "Nothing. Take him down first." "Yes." Qi Dai was confused. He had already said what he needed to say. Why was the eldest young master still unwilling to let him go? He really didn't do anything to let the eldest young master down. Sun Qi walked to Qi Dai's side and glanced at Jiang Yuqing hesitantly. Eldest young master, then? Jiang Yuqing gave him a look and was a little impatient. Follow the plan. Sun Qi immediately agreed. A trace of uneasiness emerged in Qi Dai's heart. Follow the plan. What plan? His intuition told him that bang. Sun Qi's hand chopped Qi Dai until his two eyes rolled back and he fainted. Then he personally dragged Qi Dai out. After the door was closed, Jiang Yuqing was the only one left in the room. He took a deep breath and walked towards the bed behind the screen. After taking off his clothes, he carefully examined the wound on his lower abdomen. The burning pain just now only appeared for a moment and then dissipated. A brush was stabbed straight in, causing a small wound. Plus, xuanhuan had already treated it for him, so it was already getting better. But that strange burning pain really made Jiang Yuqing worried. He sat cross-legged, circulated his force and carefully checked the situation in his body, but didn't find any problems. After thinking about it, he asked someone to invite xuanhuan over. After hearing his description, xuanhuan was also full of surprise. But after repeatedly checking Jiang Yuqing's pulse 3 times, he still didn't find anything wrong. This eldest young master doesn't seem to have any other problems apart from these injuries. What's the pain you mentioned? Jiang Yuqing frowned. It's like a fire, but it's fleeting. I checked myself and there's no problem, but this pain is really strange. He was cautious and suspicious by nature, not to mention that this matter involved his body. It was impossible for him not to care. Xuanhuan looked ashamed. It's probably because my medical skills aren't good enough. Why don't I find someone else to take a look at eldest young master? No. Jiang Yuqing shook his head. Xuanhuan was a little puzzled. What? Zuomingshi and the other lords are still reliable, and they probably won't reveal your body's condition. Those 3 heavenly doctors were xuanhuan and Jiang Yuqing's confidants. If not, they wouldn't have been specially chosen to take care of the emperor. Jiang Yuqing didn't say anything, but his cold and solemn expression made Xuanhuan's heart race. Could it be that eldest young master no longer trusted those people? Now is a critical time. I can't reveal anything about my body's condition. Thus, even for the few of them, it was best for them to not know what to do. What of jianghu of those words of his? Xuanhuan did not ask further. Then I'll go back and look through the medical books to see if I can find anything. Jiang Yuqing nodded. After Xuanhuan left, Jiang Yuqing got up, walked to the table and looked at the pen carefully. The blood stains on it had already dried. Other than the first time, he couldn't see any traces. Jiang Yuqing looked at the table with one hand and fell into deep thought. Did this matter have anything to do with Chu Luiyue? In Xiling City there were many martial artists at the peak of the 4th stage, but he couldn't think of anyone who had such guts and acted so accurately and ruthlessly. But Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu had alibis. Moreover, it was impossible for the people in the palace in Muqinghe to lie. It seemed that he could only slowly find an opportunity to probe, Jiang Yuqing thought with a frown. If it was really Chu Luiyue, then where did the hatred she had for him come from? Knock knock. Just as Jiang Yuqing was puzzled, there was suddenly a series of hurried knocks on the door. Jiang Yuqing's expression turned cold. It was already so late, why was there still someone here? Before he could speak, a woman's sobbing voice came from outside the door. Big brother, open the door. It was Jiang Yuji. Jiang Yuqing suppressed the anger in his heart and walked over to open the door. Jiang Yuji was actually wearing a veil that covered most of her face. What are you doing? Jiang Yuqing asked with a frown. Jiang Yuji's eyes were red, but Uncle Fu, who was following behind her, immediately knelt down. Eldest young master, please forgive me. It's all my fault. Jiang Yuqing's heart sank. He pulled her directly into the room and pulled off the veil on her face. Her face was bruised and swollen again. Jiang Yuji cried. Big brother, when I went out today I was beaten up by that person again. Jiang Yuqing's temples were throbbing. There were too many things to complain about and for a moment he didn't know what to say. He took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart with great difficulty. He looked at Uncle Fu. What's going on? On such a cold day, Uncle Fu was sweating profusely. He said nervously, Eldest young master, this old servant accompanied 4th Miss out today, but when we were settling the bill, 4th Miss disappeared. When this old servant found her again, I saw. 4th Miss was already like this. This old servant has failed in his duty, please punish me, eldest young master. Actually, Uncle Fu was also very wronged. He had been carefully accompanying Jiang Yuji the whole day. Who knew that in such a short time, the other party would actually make a move? Jiang Yuqing had already experienced countless troublesome things in this day, but he didn't expect that they still wouldn't stop in the middle of the night. The aura around him was cold and sinister. What's the use of punishing her now? The key is to find that person. This time, did you see what that person looked like? Jiang Yuji shook her head with tears in her eyes. Uncle Fu said, "Eldest young master, since that person was able to quietly take forth miss away from this old servant, his strength must be above this old servant's." Jiang Yuqing's heart trembled slightly. Although Uncle Fu wasn't a top expert, he wasn't weak either. It would be easy for the other party to send a powerhouse of this level to take Jiang Yuji's life. But the other party didn't do so. This was clearly to torture Jiang Yuji. Thinking of this, he glanced at her and saw that Jiang Yuji looked aggrieved and there was deep fear in her eyes. Big brother. I won't go out in the future. Can you quickly find that person? Last time Jiang Yuji was still extremely arrogant. Now that she had suffered, she instantly became obedient. Jiang Yuqing's heart ached and he was angry. In the end he could only say, "Go back and recuperate first. Don't go out during this period of time. I will send someone to investigate this matter." Jiang Yuji didn't have any objections and agreed miserably. Jiang Yuqing didn't sleep well that night. He had nightmares. That faintly discernible burning sensation always reminded him of a big fire. And this time in his sleep he became the person in the fire. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. It was actually quite normal for someone to assassinate him now. However, on the same day, another important piece of news came from the palace. In the imperial court, the third princess discussed with all the officials and decided to marry Jiang Yuqing on the 6th of June. Calculating the time, it was about 3 months later. It was like a clap of thunder. Everyone knew that the day of the wedding was the day when third Princess Xuanhuan ascended the throne. Chu Estate. In the room, Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged, holding his breath and concentrating. The origin power of heaven and earth in the surroundings flowed into her body endlessly, passing through her limbs and bones before finally converging into the water droplet in her dantian. The 4 lines were bright and clear on the surface of the water droplet. Chu Luiyue faintly felt as if he had touched an invisible barrier. She knew very well that it was the threshold of a rank 5 warrior. After the battle at the Square Stream sect meeting, the power in her body had become much more solid. Thinking about it, it was time to choose to break through now. Chu Luiyue placed both hands on her knees and sped up the flow of origin power in her body. Above her head, an energy vortex quickly appeared. Waves of origin power quickly flowed in. The aura and pressure around her also began to rise at a speed visible to the naked eye. Outside the door, Rongxiu walked along the corridor. Before he reached, he seemed to have sensed something and looked at the room. A faint ripple could be felt coming from it. His eyes moved slightly and he stood still on the spot. With a wave of his sleeve, a silver barrier quickly enveloped the entire room. "Master!" When Yanqing arrived, he had just shouted when he saw his master standing in the corridor with his hands behind his back, as if waiting for something. He immediately shut up tactfully and looked at the room where Chu Luiyue was. When he saw the silver barrier, he thought for a moment and understood. Master is protecting Miss Luyu? Could it be that Miss Luyu is going to break through again? Yanqing sighed in his heart. Miss Luyu's breakthrough speed was too fast. In less than a year, she went from a good-for-nothing to the peak of rank 4 and was about to break through to rank 5. Even if it was a cultivator with the same Daijing Yuan Meridian talent, it would be very difficult to achieve this step. Moreover, she was a triple cultivator. Apart from martial artist cultivation, the ranks of Shen Master and Celestial Physician were also constantly increasing. Even if she was placed in their place, she would not lose to others. Sensing Yanqing's arrival, Rongxiu turned his head and looked over. "What's the matter?" Yanqing stepped forward and bowed. "Master, 36 revered Elder Ming is back. He's waiting in the front hall." Rongxiu raised his eyebrows. "So fast?" At that time, 36 revered Elder Ming had come to Xiling with him. However, after arriving, he asked 36 revered Elder Ming to help investigate a matter. 36 revered Elder Ming was unwilling at first. He wanted to see Chu Luiyue before leaving. In the end, he was persuaded by Rongxiu. According to Rongxiu's previous estimation, 36 revered Elder Ming would only return in half a month. He didn't expect it to be so fast. He turned around and glanced at the silver barrier, but he didn't move. Yanqing hesitated for a moment and asked, "Master, aren't you going now?" Rongxiu was calm. "Wait a little longer." Wait for what? Of course he was waiting for Chu Luiyue to break through. Yan Qing was very puzzled. It was naturally a good thing that Miss Luyu had broken through to rank 5. However, why did Master still want to guard her personally? At this level there shouldn't be any problems. It should be over soon. However, he didn't dare to say this out loud. He could only say, then I'll go back and report to 36 revered elders first. Rong Xiao nodded. However, just as Yan Qing turned around and was about to leave, he saw a figure walking over from not far away. It was 36 revered elder Ming. His footsteps seemed slow, but in the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of him silently. Yan Qing immediately bowed, but 36 revered elder Ming waved his hand. No need, no need. I'm here to see the little princess consort. As he spoke, he looked curiously at Chu Liyue's room and asked in surprise. Is she going to break through? Rong Xiao, didn't you say that she's still a rank 4 warrior? Why are you guarding her now? For convenience, he disguised himself as an elder of Mingyue Tianshan this time. Therefore he no longer addressed Rong Xiao as Your Highness, and called him by his name. Rong Xiao seemed to have expected that he couldn't wait to come, and a smile appeared on his face. Naturally it's because I need it. Bus. A wave suddenly spread out from the room. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 669. The silver barrier was hit and it rippled slightly. 36 respected Elder Ming was a little surprised. Is she about to break through to become a rank 5 martial artist? Rong Xiao nodded. 36 respected Elder Ming looked at the surging heaven and earth force and was even more surprised. This movement doesn't seem like it. Rank 5 martial artist? When a cultivator broke through this threshold, it wouldn't cause too much of a commotion. Not to mention them, even the normal cultivators in Xiling City wouldn't pay much attention to it and were all used to it. Rong Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. If her breakthrough was really the same as normal people, why would he do this? 36 respected Elder Ming's heart skipped a beat when he saw Rong Xiao's expression. Bus. Another movement came. This time it was even more obvious than the previous one. The heaven and earth force started to surge in at an even faster speed. 36 respected Elder Ming watched for a while and became interested. It seemed like this girl was unusual. He also wanted to see how capable the woman who could make Rong Xiao so worried about her was. In the room, Chu Liyue's shoulders drooped slightly. She placed her hands on her knees with her palms facing up. The energy vortex above her head became bigger and bigger, and its spinning speed became faster and faster. Vaguely, Chu Liyue could even hear the sound of surging tides. That was the sound of abundant heaven and earth force surging into her body. Waves of vigorous heaven and earth force swam in her body and kept washing her yuan meridian before finally pouring into the water droplet. However, even with so much heaven and earth force surging in, the water droplet didn't move for a long time. The invisible barrier was within reach, but when Chu Liyue tried to break through, she realized that the energy required to take this step was much greater than expected. Whoosh, whoosh, heaven and earth force surged inside and outside her body, and even her eardrums seemed to be gurgling. Suddenly, a cluster of bright red flames emerged from her left palm. That flame danced excitedly like a spirit and then started to attract even more heaven and earth force toward her. Chu Liyue's body was like a bottomless pit, crazily devouring the energy of heaven and earth. The scarlet flames refined the energy, and the origin power carried a scorching aura as it poured into his dantian. Half of Chu Liyue's body began to heat up. Shortly after, a strand of origin power floated out from the water droplet. Like smoke, it slowly spread to her internal organs. Chu Liyue's eyebrows twitched slightly. A colorless flame quickly appeared on his right hand. It was the karmic fire in the heavenly square cauldron. At this moment, it was burning quietly and had also begun to compete for the origin power of heaven and earth. He quickly refined it and poured it into Chu Liyue's body. The more the 5 internal organs were connected, the faster the cultivator's cultivation speed would increase. But in fact, connecting the 5 internal organs had extremely high requirements for the cultivator. Ordinary cultivators would only attempt this when they were breaking through to a rank 6 warrior. They might not succeed. According to the difference in talent and physique, the number of the 5 internal organs was also different. Some could connect a few at once while some could only connect one. Many cultivators didn't connect all the internal organs even after becoming a rank 7 warrior. But Chu Liyue was just about to break through to a rank 5 warrior, so how could she connect the 5 internal organs? Digression. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. No wonder. Brat, your eyesight is quite sharp. Didn't Chu Luiyue come from an ordinary family? Didn't they say that she was a good-for-nothing when it came to cultivation? What was going on now? As far as he knew, Rong Xiu had been eyeing the girl ever since she started cultivating. Back then he had thought that since it was rare for Rong Xiu to fall in love with a girl, even if her background and talent were slightly inferior, it wouldn't matter. Who would have thought that after all this time, this brat had brought along a true genius? To think that he had thought so much before. It was simply a waste of emotions. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows, and his lips curled into a smile. Thank you for the compliment. Between his brows, there was a proud look that was not concealed at all. 36 Respected Elder Ming, how shameless. Boom. A series of explosions could be heard. She's still continuing? 36 Respected Elder Ming was shocked and hurriedly looked over. Could it be that she can still open the second treasury? In the room, Chu Luiyue's eyes were tightly shut. After the first success, the subsequent process became much simpler. Very quickly, the second starlight appeared in the water droplet. This time it was the liver. After opening 2 treasures in succession, the force in Chu Luiyue's body was still surging crazily, and there was no sign of it stopping. Chu Luiyue made up her mind and decided to directly open all 5 treasures in one go. Her entire person seemed to have entered some kind of wonderful state, and she completely forgot about the flow of time in the outside world. She only continued to absorb the energy from the outside world, and then converted it into her own force. Again and again she tried to continue opening the remaining 5 treasures. The water droplet rotated slowly, and the force that surged out also increased. Finally there was a soft sound. Spleen. The third starlight flashed slowly. 36 Respected Elder Ming's expression gradually became serious. Such talent was really hard to come by. Generally speaking, it was actually very difficult for a cultivator who tried to open the 5 treasures for the first time to succeed. There were really very few who could open all 3 treasures in one go. And this, to a certain extent, also foretold the cultivator's potential. If Chu Luiyue could still continue, boom. As if to confirm his thoughts, there was another boom in the room. A wave that contained powerful energy spread out in all directions. The barrier shook even more violently. This was already the 4th treasury. 36 Respected Elder Ming, who originally didn't care about this matter, already had his entire heart in his mouth at this moment. Even Yan Qing's face, which had always been as cold as ice, was now filled with deep shock. Only Rong Xiu had one hand behind his back, and his posture was calm and lazy. It was as if he had already predicted the result. After opening all 4 treasures, 4 starlights shone brightly in the water droplet in her dantian. At this moment, Chu Luiyue's speed of absorbing the force had already reached 4 times the initial speed. Fortunately, her yuan meridian was wide and tough enough. Otherwise, it would really be hard for her to withstand such a turbulent force. Waves of force washed through her body. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel that the aura on her body was continuously strengthening. Although her eyes were closed, her 5 senses were obviously much sharper than before. Chu Luiyue held her breath, and a flash of passion flashed across her heart. If she could open the last treasury, it would be extremely beneficial to her cultivation in the future. So, no matter what, she must succeed. The last treasury was undoubtedly the most crucial and also the most difficult checkpoint. Among 1,000 rank 6 martial artists, there might not even be one who could open all 5 treasures. The difficulty was imaginable. Chu Luiyue tried again and again. The first time didn't work, the second time. The second time didn't work, the third time. After an unknown period of time, there was still no movement from the 5th treasury. The force in Chu Luiyue's body was constantly depleting. But she still didn't stop, and she still tried her best every time. She was incomparably stubborn and tenacious. It's been so long, the 5th treasury shouldn't be able to open anymore. Looking at the sky, 36 Respected Elder Ming muttered to himself. Actually, it's already very outstanding to be able to open the 4th treasury on the first try. It's fine if you really can't open the 5th treasury. Rong Xiu didn't move at all, as if he was still waiting. After a while, his eyes moved slightly. Boom. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 671. The last treasure was successfully unlocked. The 5th star finally appeared in the water droplet. Almost at the same time, Chu Luiyue heard the sound of something shattering. Bang. That was the barrier of a rank 5 warrior finally breaking. As though the floodgates had been opened, a flood poured down. The wind howled and countless waves were swept up. Chu Luiyue retracted her hands and the two balls of flames quickly returned to her body. A powerful aura spread out from Chu Luiyue's body. The fifth pattern gradually appeared on the water droplet. Buzz. Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes. There seemed to be two balls of flames burning in her eyes. It was extremely bright and brilliant. A true rank 5 warrior. She stretched out her hand and drew a line of origin power. 5 stars were faintly discernible in her palm. Even that force was wrapped in an unusually powerful aura. This level of strength was more than a few times stronger than before. This was the strength of a rank 5 warrior who had unlocked all 5 treasures. Even someone as calm and collected as Chu Luiyue couldn't help but feel agitated at this moment. She had never thought that not only could she be reborn as a human, but she could also cultivate to such a level again. Although there was no way to be compared to her previous self, Chu Luiyue could clearly feel that as her strength increased, she was indeed getting closer to her previous self step by step. There would be a day when she would return to her peak. She would take back everything that belonged to her. When the fluctuations around her gradually dissipated, Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and calmed herself down. She stood up and walked outside. The door opened and a few gazes looked over. Chu Luiyue followed the gaze and looked over. The first to see was Rongxiu. Standing behind him was Yan Qing. Beside him was a green-robed old man with white hair who was looking at her with a smile. This is, Chu Luiyue was puzzled. Rongxiu waved his sleeves and the silver barrier disappeared silently. Only then did Chu Luiyue realize that he seemed to have set up a barrier outside the room. Is he protecting me? Well, she had caused quite a commotion just now and it would be troublesome if she attracted someone. She had been in the limelight in West Hill recently and there were many pairs of eyes looking at her. Although she wasn't afraid, she knew that it was easier to dodge an open spear than an arrow in the dark. It was always better to be careful. Moreover, she had unlocked all 5 treasures as a rank 5 warrior. If this news were to spread, it would probably cause a bloodbath. Thinking of this, a smile appeared on her face. Just as she was about to walk forward, she saw that the old man had already taken a step forward. Little Wang. Little Luyu, right? Although the old man's face was full of wrinkles, his eyes were very clear and he looked hale and hearty. When he walked over, it seemed like he hadn't moved at all, but in the next moment he was already right before Zhang Xian. Moreover, there was not the slightest bit of power. Chu Liyue's heart tingled. This old man's strength was probably far beyond her expectations. At this moment he was looking at Chu Luiyue with a smile and a curious and eager face. Chu Luiyue glanced at Rongxiu and saw that he was smiling. It was obvious that he had a good relationship with this old man, so she smiled obediently and bowed. Luyu greets Senior. 36 respected Elder Ming looked at the little girl in front of him happily. Her face was porcelain white and her eyes were clean. There was a hint of nobility in her eyes. She was really likable. Not bad, not bad. Rongxiu's taste was indeed good. He liked her the moment he saw her. You don't have to be so polite. This old man's title in Mingyue Tianshan is 36 Ming. You can call me 36 respected Elder. So he was an elder from Mingyue Tianshan. Chu Luiyue understood and immediately responded obediently. 36 respected elder came to West Hill this time because he has something important to do. He also came here to take a look. Rongxiu walked over and explained. Chu Luiyue nodded and said apologetically, 36 respected elder came from afar. 36th elder, you've come from afar. Please forgive me for not being able to receive you properly. No. This old man knows that you were cultivating just now. This old man has always been free to come and go. I don't care about these formalities. Besides, Rongxiu is here. It's more important for you to break through. As he spoke, a trace of admiration appeared in his eyes. Little Luyu, your talent is really outstanding. It seemed like he already knew about what had happened just now. Chu Liyue's mind raced. It was hard not to know that an expert of this level was standing here. Moreover, Rongxiu seemed to have a good relationship with this old man and should be very trusting. In that case, she had nothing to hide. Thank you for your praise, 36 respected elder. Actually, Luyu was just a little lucky. 36 respected elder Ming chuckled. There are people in this world who can't do this even if they use up their lifetime of luck. Little Luyu, you don't have to be humble. It's Rongxiu's fortune to be able to find you. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly. It seems like someone has suddenly changed sides? Chu Liyue's face turned slightly hot. This was the first time she had heard such words from an outsider. It felt really strange. 36 respected elder Ming no longer had Rongxiu in his eyes. He only had Chu Liyue left. He had never married in his life and had no children. In the past he had always treated Rongxiu as his close relative. Not only did he teach him everything but he also often gave advice to Rongxiu. It could be said that without him, there wouldn't be Rongxiu who sat firmly on the position of Holy Son today. But there was one thing. He had great expectations for Rongxiu and was relatively strict. But when he saw Chu Luiyue, his heart instantly melted. Such a cute and beautiful little girl, isn't she meant to be pampered? Little Luyu, you're now a rank 5 warrior and have opened your 5 treasures. It's time for you to build a good cultivation foundation and stabilize your advancement. I happen to have some Earth stage martial skills, why don't you pick them? With that, 36 respected Elder Ming shook his hand. Crash. Many jade boxes instantly fell out of the universe ring. Those jade boxes were all lustrous and translucent with a faint aura. It was obvious that the items inside were not ordinary. He coughed. Old man, things are a bit messy. You can put up with it and pick whatever you like. If you don't like it, I still have more. Chu Liyue's eyes were dazed for a moment. What does this mean? There's actually someone in this world who casually gives an Earth stage martial skill on their first meeting? However, seeing Chu Liyue's expression, 36 respected Elder Ming misunderstood and thought that she didn't like them. He pondered for a moment, pulled Chu Liyue's wrist and walked to the side. He lowered his voice and whispered, Little Luyu, if you don't like these, then I actually have better things. However, those are all the sect's inheritances. I'm afraid I can only give them to you after you and Rongxiu get married. Chu Liyue's brows twitched violently. Does he mean, marry Rongxiu and give her a heaven stage martial skill? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 672. Rongxiu, who felt as if he had been sold, was speechless. Facing the extremely enthusiastic 36 respected Elder Ming, Chu Liyue was unable to withstand it. She coughed and said, Thank you, 36th Elder Ming. I appreciate your kind intentions, but this gift is really too precious. Choose one. Choose one. 36 revered Elder Ming urged. How can this little thing be considered valuable? I'll give you something better in the future. Chu Liyue was speechless. Little thing, was he talking about these Earth rank martial skills? Were all the top-notch experts now so generous? Chu Liyue still wanted to decline, but Rongxiu had already walked forward. His gaze swept across the boxes and he picked one and handed it to Chu Liyue. This is 36 Elder Ming's kind intentions. Just accept it. Otherwise, according to his character, he might really pester Chu Liyue for half a month because of this matter. Chu Liyue hesitated for a moment and could only accept the jade box. Thank you, 36 Elder Ming. 36 respected Elder Ming's eyes lit up when he saw the box. He looked at Rongxiu and chuckled. You sure know how to pick. This old man wants to give something to little Luyu, and you didn't forget to interfere? Chu Liyue looked at the two of them in confusion. Rongxiu smiled faintly. It's just in passing. As he spoke, he also took out another identical box from his universe ring and handed it to Chu Liyue. 36 Elder Ming gave you the first volume and this is the second volume. Chu Liyue was somewhat puzzled. Why was there a need to divide a martial skill into 2 volumes? Suddenly, she widened her eyes slightly. Wait a minute, if the first volume was an Earth rank martial skill, then wouldn't the second volume be a Heaven rank martial skill? Rongxiu, this second volume? Rongxiu seemed to have seen through her guess and his lips curled up slightly. You are this prince's fiancé. 36 revered Elder Ming is temporarily unable to give you this item, but this prince can. As expected. Chu Liyue immediately confirmed his guess. With the first and second volumes added together, it was definitely a heaven tier martial skill. And what did Rongxiu just say? Just in passing? 36 revered Elder Ming said sourly, you only know how to bully me. When you get married, this old man will give you whatever I want. How could it be your turn? Chu Liyue was speechless. Is this something to be proud of? The vast majority of cultivators in this world might not even be able to see a heaven-ranked martial skill in their entire lives, but they had actually given it away so casually, and she had just broken through to become a rank 5 warrior, yet she had received such a precious gift out of the blue? Chu Liyue looked at Rongxiu meaningfully. She was now extremely sure that the Honorable Prince Li, oh no, His Highness Saint was indeed from a wealthy family. Come to think of it, although I didn't have anything when I was reborn, my luck seems to be ridiculously good. After packing up, the few of them finally entered the house. Chu Liyue personally brewed tea and received another round of praise from 36 revered Elder Ming. Little Luyu, the tea you brewed is really good. Chu Luyue asked curiously. Do you like Jin Junmei? 36 revered Elder Ming was stunned for a moment before he immediately nodded. Rong Xiu sat at the side and watched this scene with a faint smile. Who didn't know that 36 revered Elder Ming only drank the ice and snow water that he carried with him? Especially at his level, he didn't care about these things. Although his acting skills were clumsy, he was sincere. Chu Luyue could roughly tell what was going on, and she found it funny and warm. She could tell that he really liked her and valued her. All of this was because he cared about Rong Xiu. Although she had never heard Rong Xiu mention it before, this old man was extremely important to Rong Xiu. There's a piece of news from the palace today. Rong Xiu took a sip of tea, and the fragrance instantly spread between his lips and teeth. The wedding between the third princess and young Master Jiang is set for the 6th of June. Chu Luyue was stunned. This is... Xuanhuan finally can't hold it in anymore. Is she going to ascend the throne? While she was in a daze, she realized that Rong Xiu was looking at her with a deep gaze. Chu Luyue's heart skipped a beat. He seems to care a lot about my reaction? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 673. Actually, this matter was within her expectations. She was even a little surprised that the two of them had only decided on a date now. After all, the two of them had seemed so affectionate on the night of her death. She had thought that after her death, the two of them would be in power and could find a random reason to quickly get married. The two of them were irreconcilable enemies to her. Apart from that, sisters, fiancé and fiancée, those had long disappeared. Therefore, when she heard this news, she was not surprised at all. She even wanted to laugh. Two people whose bodies were severely injured, getting married at this time was simply asking for a snub. 6th of June. Calculating the time, there were only about 3 months left. Actually, this was not a long time. Apart from the wedding, there would definitely be a coronation ceremony. There were many things that would take a lot of time and energy to prepare. She just did not know why the two of them chose this time. Besides, even if they really got married, not to mention Jiang Yuqing Xuanhuan, how could a piece of trash with a damaged Yuan meridian pick up the Tianling scepter? It was fine if she used special methods on normal days, but on the day of the wedding, if she could not pick up the Tianling scepter in front of all the officials, the scene would definitely be beautiful. Thinking of this, Chu Luyue was actually a little excited. TSK. Her bad habit of being a busybody was getting worse. Seeing Chu Luyue's expression change and a sly smile in the end, Rong Xiu's eyes flashed and his smile deepened. He leaned back in his chair lazily. It seemed that some of his worries were indeed unnecessary. Pretty good. Chu Luyue smiled. The emperor of the Tianling dynasty has been in a coma for 2 years and has been without a leader. Now it is time to solve this problem. However, whether it can really be solved is another matter. Since Xuanhuan dared to do this, she must be prepared. As expected, she heard Rong Xiu continue. Also, there is one more thing. The third princess said that the emperor had been in a coma for a long time, and they needed to find several special herbs and the blood of divine beasts to wake him up. For this reason, she planned to personally head to the Great Desolate Swamp. Chu Luyue was really surprised this time. Great Desolate Swamp? That place was at the western border of the Tianling dynasty. It was extremely remote and the environment was harsh. Why would Xuanhuan want to go there in person? Back then, Mu Qinghe had joined the Black Cavalry and fought for many years in the Great Desolate Swamp. In the end, she had quelled the rebellion with great difficulty, which was why she had her current status. It was easy to imagine the dangers involved. Chu Luyue had been to the Great Desolate Swamp in his previous life. That group of people who rebelled had all disappeared, but it was precisely because of them that countless people realized how powerful the countless treasures hidden in the Great Desolate Swamp were. Therefore, from then on, even more people went there. In addition, there was an even more important point: divine beasts. There hadn't been a divine beast in the Tianling dynasty for hundreds of years. Even the former Xuanhuan Yu had only contracted a 9th-grade magical beast, not a divine beast. No one knew when it started, but there was suddenly a rumor that a divine beast appeared in the Great Desolate Swamp. In this world where the strong were respected, all these factors had a fatal attraction to all cultivators. Therefore, after Xuanhuan mentioned this matter, many people immediately expressed their desire to go with her. Chu Luyue thought for a moment. That's true. Rong Xiu looked at her. Then, do you plan to go? Chu Luyue was a disciple of the Chongshu Pavilion, so she naturally had a chance. Moreover, she had just won 3 matches, turned the tide, and preserved the Chongshu Pavilion's position as one of the 4 major sections. She would definitely be the focus of attention. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment. Go. Why not? It wasn't like she hadn't been there before. Moreover, she also wanted to see what tricks xuanhuan had up her sleeves. Suddenly, she frowned slightly. But, if I go, what about you? Rong Xiu smiled faintly. I'm leaving tomorrow 1 step earlier than you. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised, and a sense of loss suddenly surged in her heart. So soon? I've been resting here for a long time and it's time to go. Chu Luiyue realized that Rong Xiu had indeed stayed in West Hill for more than a month. It was just that she had been busy with many things, and the 2 of them didn't have much chance to be alone. Chu Luiyue fell silent for a moment. Rong Xiu glanced at Yanqing indifferently. Yanqing immediately understood what he meant. Master, I suddenly remembered that there are still some things I haven't done, so I'll take my leave first. Rong Xiu nodded slightly. Yanqing slipped away. Rong Xiu looked at 36 respected Elder Ming again. However, 36 respected Elder Ming was looking at Chu Luiyue, and he asked with a worried and eager expression. Little Luyu, the place you mentioned is so dangerous. Do you want me to go with you? Digression. At about 12:30 p.m., mobile phone users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 674. Rong Xiu, 36 respected Elder Ming, you seem to have said something wrong? This is your first time meeting you, or is it appropriate for you to speak like this? As if Rong Xiu's gaze was too cold and resentful, the slow-witted 36 respected Elder Ming finally realized something and quickly turned his head to look at him. Hey look, Rong Xiu is also very worried. I feel more at ease accompanying you. Rong Xiu? He suddenly rejoiced that he didn't let 36 respected Elder Ming meet Chu Luiyue in the past month. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had a good time during this period of time. Chu Luiyue smiled helplessly. 36 respected Elder Ming, I'm afraid this won't work. Xuanhuan had caused quite a commotion this time, and it was obvious that she was very strict in selecting people. Each of the 8 sects would send out 10 people. Those who didn't know the inside story would probably think that this was an excellent opportunity and would fight until their heads bled. With such strict control over these sects, people like 36 respected Elder Ming would definitely not be allowed to go together. Hearing this, 36 respected Elder Ming's face was filled with disappointment. He originally wanted to follow and protect little Luyu. But don't worry, I will be very careful and pay attention to safety. Chu Luiyue said again. Sigh, all right. 36 respected Elder Ming let out a long sigh and began to take things out from his universe ring. If that's the case, then I can't help you with anything else. I can only give you some things to protect yourself. Here, this and this. And this. Take them all. As he spoke, he handed over another pile of things. Chu Luiyue, it was really hard to guess how many treasures there were in the big boss's universe ring. I mustn't disappoint 36 respected Elder Ming's kind intentions. Rong Xiu raised his finger and moved all those things to Chu Luiyue's feet. Then he took out another pile and similarly piled them in front of Chu Luiyue. I'm giving these to you. Chu Luiyue. Why did he inexplicably smell a faint murderous aura? Chu Luiyue felt really embarrassed and tried to stop him again and again. Hence, he successfully kept all these things into his universe ring. The 3 of them were happy. Chu Luiyue was busy receiving gifts, but he didn't know that Xiling City was already in an uproar because of these 2 matters. The 3rd princess and young Master Zhang's wedding. To His Majesty, to His Majesties, His Majesties, to the disciples of the major sects were all extremely excited. That was the great desolate swamp. Although there were countless treasures. If he could find some kind of treasure or even obtain the inheritance of a certain expert, that would be a great opportunity. All the cultivators in the world wished to become stronger. Therefore, even if they knew that the great desolate swamp was dangerous, it still couldn't stop them from wanting to go. For this reason, the major sects had already begun to consider candidates. Mountain. I'm not going. Jian Fengqi crossed his legs and waved his bone fan. He looked lazy and indifferent. That's a barren land. Whoever wants to go can go. Jian Shai looked at him disapprovingly. What barren land? That's a place where divine beasts have appeared. Let's not talk about whether the rumor is true or not. Even if it's true, do you think I'll have a chance to get that divine beast? Jian Fengqi sneered. If only divine beasts were so easy to tame. Jian Shai also knew that what he said made sense, so he didn't argue with him. Even if you can't find a divine beast, it's good to go and experience it. You grew up in Xiling and almost never went outside. Now that this is a rare opportunity, you can go out and see. Moreover, the third princess is going to look for herbs for his majesty. You're not interested in divine beasts, but there should be herbs, right? Jian Fengqi glanced at his father. Father, I'm fine in Shilling. Why do you insist on me going out? Even if I didn't experience those things, aren't I still fine now? I'm a celestial physician, and you're also a celestial physician. Why are you still forcing me to fight with a group of martial artists and Shen masters? Jian Shai really didn't know what to do with this son of his. He only cared about himself all day long and wanted the best for everything. He wasn't willing to suffer at all. Jian Fengqi glanced at him and continued. Besides, Mu Qinghe used to rise from that place. Is there anyone who knows Da Huang Swamp better than him? It's enough for him to go on this trip. There are so many other people going, but they're just joining in the fun. However, he didn't like it. Xuanhuan was there, and he was really afraid that she would ruin his mood. Besides, Xuanhuan's words were just used to scare people. Only she knew what she really wanted to do. He might as well stay in Shilling and do what he should do. Seeing that he really couldn't persuade him, Jian Shai could only give up. Master, can I go? Mu Hongyu suddenly asked. Jian Shai was stunned and immediately nodded. Of course. Although there were only 10 places, Mu Hongyu had the incorporeal body. In addition, she had improved rapidly during this period. Of course, she could go if she wanted to. Mu Hongyu's eyes lit up. That's great. Thank you, Master. That place sounds very interesting. And if I'm not wrong, Lu Yu will definitely go too. Jian Fengqi frowned slightly and was about to stop her, but he swallowed his words when he saw Mu Hongyu's excited expression. Jian Shai shook his head at Jian Fengqi. Since you don't want to go, then it's up to you. Many disciples on the mountain want to go. Jian Fengqi was unmoved. He stood up, stretched, and walked out leisurely. When he passed by Mu Hongyu, he knocked Mu Hongyu's head with his bone fan and whispered, "You really don't know the difference between life and death." Mu Hongyu blinked and wrinkled her nose. Who was reckless? Just as she was about to retort, Jian Fengqi had already walked away. Imperial Palace, Huayang Hall. Xuanhuan sat there thinking about something. Chani was packing her things. They would set off for the Da Huang Swamp in 3 days. This time it would probably take more than a month. Therefore she had to bring a lot of things. The Da Huang Swamp was a dangerous place. If it was in the past, Xuanhuan would still have the courage to go. But now, her body, she felt more or less uneasy. Fortunately, she had brought a lot of people this time. Your Highness, Your Highness? Chani called out to her twice before Xuanhuan came back to her senses. What's wrong? Chani looked at her expression and asked hesitantly. Is the third princess worried about something? With Vice Admiral Mu leading the team this time, there shouldn't be a problem. Him? Xuanhuan scoffed. He won't listen to me. Although she knew that Mu Qinghe was Jiang Yuqing's subordinate, perhaps because he had been by Xuanhuan Yu's side for so many years, she couldn't trust him. If it weren't for the fact that they were going to the Da Huang Swamp and Mu Qinghe was the most suitable, she wouldn't have brought him along. Your Highness, you're worrying too much. Isn't young Master Jiang accompanying us? If you're really worried, why don't you bring that thing along? Xuanhuan turned around. What? Chani bowed and whispered, have you forgotten that that person left behind a set of armor? Digression. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 675. Are you talking about the pure gold armor? Xuanhuan furrowed her eyebrows. That item is not bad, but it has always been in Xiaoyu Hall. Everyone in the Tianling dynasty knows that it belongs to Xuanhuan Yu. If I take it out, that person has already passed away. It's a waste for the holy item to be left in the pavilion. If it can be used by Your Highness and protect Your Highness, it will be the best use. Chani didn't seem to mind. She advised, you are already above everyone, and you will be getting married in a few months' time. No one is more suitable than you to be the new owner of this pure gold armor. Xuanhuan was moved by her words. The origin of this pure gold saint armor had quite a long history. Back then, when Xuanhuan Yu had just become of marriageable age, she had led the Black Cavalry to patrol the territory. Along the way, she had accidentally entered the ruins of an ancient battlefield and obtained the pure gold armor. She had only publicly worn it once, and that was during the final battle in Da Huang Swamp. It was rumored that she had worn the pure gold armor and fought against 3 rank 8 martial artists alone. She had even killed all of them in the end. From then on, the pure gold armor had become famous. Xuanhuan Yu was the heavenly princess and had seen many good items. However, this pure gold armor was definitely one of the top 3 yuan tools that she had. It was obvious how powerful it was. Xuanhuan had naturally been moved by this item. She had even thought of taking the pure gold armor for herself after dealing with Shangguanyu. However, her yuan meridian had been burned and hadn't recovered. Thus, she had thrown this matter to the back of her mind. Now that Chani mentioned it, she suddenly recalled it. What you said makes sense. Shangguanyu narrowed her eyes and thought about it. Let's go now. Xiaoyu Hall. This used to be the most honorable place in the entire palace, other than the Universal Palace where the current emperor lived. This was because this used to be the residence of the heavenly princess. The bustling of the past had all disappeared. The current Xiaoyu Hall had become very lonely and cold. Other than the palace guards who were sent to guard the palace, almost no one would come here. Because the empress concubine died from qi deviation during cultivation, it wasn't very pleasant to hear. In addition, the one in power now was the third princess, so people rarely talked about the past. In this palace, it was true that each new emperor brought in his own ministers. In the eyes of the world, the third princess and the empress concubine were extremely close and had a very good relationship. However, the palace servants who had been in the palace for a long time all had a keen mind. They more or less understood the subtleties involved. Therefore, when Shangguanyu arrived, the palace servants of Xiaoyu Hall were very shocked. Long live the third princess. Shangguanyu waved her hand casually and stepped into the courtyard, heading straight for the sleeping quarters. I'm just looking around. Do whatever you need to do. After everyone agreed in unison, they waited for Shangguanyu to enter the bedchamber. Then they exchanged glances and slowly dispersed. Ever since Her Highness the Empress concubine left, the third princess came a few times. She always came with red eyes and left with red eyes. He didn't come much this year. Today's visit was really inexplicable. But no matter what, they still had to serve her carefully. Shangguanyu walked into the bedchamber. This room clearly hadn't been visited by anyone for a long time. The air was filled with a faint smell of dust that had been sealed for a long time. When the sunlight shone in, one could see the dust dancing in the air. Shangguanyu frowned and used a handkerchief to cover her mouth and nose. She was angry and amused at the same time. Who would have thought that the once glorious Xiaoyu Hall would fall to such a state one day? If it was a normal day, she would definitely immediately go out and admonish her to show her deep sisterly love. But today she really wasn't in the mood and couldn't be bothered to do it. She walked to the bedside and gently rubbed the edge of the bed. After touching a protrusion, she pressed with her finger and the sandalwood cabinet diagonally opposite quietly moved aside. A secret compartment appeared in front of her. Shangguanyu walked over and knocked on it a few times. Click. The secret compartment opened. A pure golden armor was placed in the middle of it. Even in this dark space, this pure gold armor still emitted a faint glow that couldn't be ignored. From top to bottom, it emitted an indescribable noble and lofty aura. At a glance, one could almost feel the surging blood qi on the armor. This wasn't the first time Shangguanyu saw this pure gold armor. But every time she saw it, her heart would be shocked. It was a true sacred object passed down from the ancient times. It was an incomparable existence that could be called a divine artifact. Shangguanyu was excited and couldn't help but reach out her hand to touch it slowly. It was cold and hard to the touch, but it emitted a powerful pressure. If she really wore it, what would it look like? Shangguanyu took a deep breath and carefully took off the pure gold armor. She held it in her arms and felt it against her face for a while. This was a powerful aura. This armor recognized its owner. Unfortunately, her yuan meridian was damaged and she could only look at it. When her body recovers, all of these would be hers. Shangguanyu carefully put the pure gold armor into her universe ring. Then she restored everything to its original state before leaving. Chani was waiting at the door. As Shangguanyu walked out, she said indifferently, "Long Qianyu hasn't been cleaned up." Chapter 676. Jiang Yuqing glanced at Feng Xuanhuan, and the latter immediately took his leave. Then Mu Qinghe walked in. Jiang Yuqing leaned back in his chair. "Tell me what's the matter?" Mu Qinghe cupped his fists. "Young master, I've been secretly investigating the 100 Herbs building recently, but they're very guarded, so it's difficult to find anything. However, I accidentally learned that Yu Ling is in charge of the 100 Herbs building on the surface, but in fact there's a first master behind him. That's the real master of the 100 Herbs building." "First master?" Jiang Yuqing frowned. "Who is this person?" He only knew that there must be someone behind the 100 Herbs building, but he didn't know who it was. Moreover, because the 100 Herbs building had been doing business quietly in the past and did not involve his interests, he did not seriously send people to investigate. Mu Qinghe shook his head. This person is very mysterious and there's no clue. But I heard that this first master has a wife and he loves her very much. But there's nothing else. First master, wife, these were all hearsay. When he really wanted to investigate, Mu Qinghe found that the other party was more powerful than he had imagined, and everything was done flawlessly. This made him even more helpless. If Chu Luiyue really has a backer in the 100 Herbs building, it's very likely to be this person. Otherwise, there's really no way to explain what happened recently. Chu Luiyue comes from an ordinary family and has never even been to West Hill. How could she know such a person? Jiang Yuqing was a little skeptical. Mu Qinghe lowered his head slightly. It said that the last time Chu Luiyue went to the 100 Herbs building, Yu Ling was very polite to her and even entertained her personally. There are probably less than 5 people in West Hill who have such treatment. Jiang Yuqing's expression changed slightly. In that case, it's possible. Can't you find out anything about the so-called first master? For example, is he from West Hill? Or perhaps it's age. Mu Qinghe shook her head, then said with some hesitation, that's right. Eldest young master, we've been secretly investigating them, but we've already been discovered. And they even gave me a warning. Jiang Yuqing's eyes suddenly turned sharp. What? Mu Qinghe opened her palm. There was a neat bloody wound on it as if it was going to be cut in half from the middle. The other party's meaning was very clear. Don't stretch your hands too far. They fought with you? Jiang Yuqing asked coldly. It's a masked man. His strength is not inferior to mine. In fact, what Mu Qinghe wanted to say was that the other party's strength was most likely higher than his. Otherwise, it would not have been so easy to leave such a wound on his palm. Jiang Yuqing was silent for a long time, as if he was holding a breath in his chest. Chapter 677. The next morning, Rong Xiu left with Yan Qing, Umo 36 respected Elder Ming and the others. Although Chu Luiyue was reluctant to part with them, he had no choice but to do so. He secretly hoped that he could settle the matters here as soon as possible. The snow on the road had basically been cleared. After sending them off, Chu Luiyue returned to the Chongshu Pavilion. Yuqi Song and Elder Xia Yi were discussing the matter of sending people to Dahuang Swamp. Unlike the other sects, the people of Chongshu Pavilion, from top to bottom, were not interested in this matter. On the one hand, the Chongshu Pavilion had experienced a series of setbacks in the past 2 years, and these people had barely survived. They would rather cultivate in a down-to-earth manner than risk their lives for an uncertain opportunity. On the other hand, there were less than 100 people left in the entire Chongshu Pavilion. It was really not a wise choice to send so many people to take the risk. What if something happened again? Whether it was Yuqi Song, Elder Xia Yi, or the disciples in the sect, they were all very conservative about this trip. Moreover, they were going with the third princess in the other sections. No one knew what would happen during this trip. This trip is dangerous and it might not be beneficial for us. I think we shouldn't go, right? Elder Xia Yi asked tentatively. Anyway, this isn't a mandatory requirement. The other sects might be overjoyed that we have 10 vacancies. Yuqi Song stroked his beard. Although you're right, we'll inevitably be criticized if the other sects go except for the Chongshu Pavilion. We've just secured our position as one of the 4 major sections. It's really inappropriate if we don't go this time. On the surface, this matter seemed to be the result of a joint discussion between the royal family and the various sections. But in fact, without the third princess's permission, Xuanhuan would never take the initiative to suggest this. In other words, they had to go this time. Otherwise, they would very likely offend the third princess. Elder Xia Yi frowned with a grave expression. Why don't we choose a compromise? Let's just pick a few people to go. Now that there are few people in our Chongshu Pavilion, it should be reasonable for a few fewer people to go. Yuqi Song nodded. It's not impossible. However, it's a little troublesome as to who to send. Among the disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion, not many would be willing to go. He also found it difficult to choose. Master, let me go. A clear voice came from outside the door. The two of them raised their heads at the same time and saw Chu Luiyue, dressed in red, walking in through the snow outside the door. Luyu, you're back? Yuqi Song was the first to speak. He looked at Chu Luiyue up and down, and a hint of shock flashed in his eyes. You broke through to a rank 5 warrior? He had only left for 2 days. How did this girl break through again? Chu Luiyue blinked. I learned a lot at the Great Sect meeting and successfully broke through. Yuchi Song and Elder Xia were speechless for a long time. Such talent, such speed of breakthrough. What else could they say? After a while, Yuchi Song cleared his throat and asked, "Did the third princess make things difficult for you?" Chu Luiyue smiled and shook her head. "No, she didn't. The third princess asked me to go over and chat for a while. I was supposed to come back yesterday, but the snow was too heavy, so I stayed in the house." Yuchi Song heaved a sigh of relief after making sure that she was safe and sound. He didn't have a good impression of xuanhuan. He always felt that she was narrow-minded and narrow-minded. Not only did she take over the power of Xuanhuan, but she was also engaged to Jiang Yuqing and had even set the date of the wedding. This made him even more disgusted. If Xuanhuan and Xuanhuan were really close, why would she be with her ex-fiancé? Yuchi Song didn't say anything and rarely got involved in the affairs of the royal family in the past 2 years. However, he still held a grudge against Xuanhuan and Jiang Yuqing. "That's good." Yuchi Song nodded and asked again. "You said that you want to go to Dahuang Swamp?" Chu Luiyue nodded seriously. "Yes. Have you thought it through? Although there may be countless treasures hidden there, it is also extremely dangerous. It was really hard to predict what would happen during this trip. Luyu, your talent is top-notch and you have been improving rapidly. You don't have to go at all. Have you thought it through?" Yuchi Song had seen how Chu Luiyue dealt with the messed yuan gravel, so he knew that she had an unusual trump card. In his opinion, no matter where Chu Luiyue cultivated, she would be able to break through smoothly and become a top-notch expert. It was really unnecessary to go to Dahuang Swamp. Chu Luiyue smiled. "I've made up my mind. There's no need to persuade me, master. The Chongshu Pavilion can't be left unattended. I'm the most suitable person to go." She was Yuchi Song's disciple and the champion of the Wanzheng competition. She was powerful enough. If the Chongshu Pavilion only sent a few people, she was undoubtedly the most suitable person. "Also, I have the ability to protect myself. I'll be careful." "You don't have to worry, master." Yuchi Song and Elder Xia exchanged a look. Chu Luiyue did seem to want to go. Moreover, she had a good reason. Yuchi Song hesitated for a long time before he finally agreed. "All right. Since you want to go, I won't stop you. Just remember one thing, safety first. If you encounter any danger, don't try to be brave. If necessary, remember to call for help." He was talking about the whistle. Chu Luiyue felt a warmth in her heart. "I understand. Don't worry, master. I'll go too." As soon as Chu Luiyue finished speaking, a familiar voice came from outside the door. She looked back. Chang Wanzhou was standing outside the door. The boy's beautiful and delicate face was expressionless. His soft, short blonde hair hung down with a few strands covering his eyes. However, the determination and stubbornness in his eyes were incomparably clear. Chu Luiyue smiled. She had already guessed it, so she wasn't surprised. She turned to look at Yuchi Song and Elder Xia. "Little Zhou is not weak. It's not a bad idea for him to go with me. What do you think?" Elder Xia laughed. "Since you're going, the boy will naturally go with you. Even if we don't agree, he'll definitely sneak in. In that case, can we still say no?" Chang Wanzhou was practically Chu Luiyue's pendant. He would go wherever she went. Moreover, he was unsociable and unruly, but he listened to every word Chu Luiyue said. It was actually not a bad idea for him to go with Chu Luiyue. After all, he was also very strong. Yuchi Song chuckled helplessly. "Since that's the case, then both of you can go. Pavilion master, can I go with you?" Another little head poked out from behind Chang Wanzhou. A round little face appeared in front of them. It was none other than Yi Ranran. Elder Xia was a little surprised. "Ranran, why do you want to go with us?" Yi Ranran was still young. In his opinion, he was still a child. She had always been obedient. He didn't expect her to want to go to such a dangerous place like Dahuang Swamp. Yi Ranran said somewhat embarrassedly. I heard that there are many precious medicinal herbs in Dahuang Swamp. I want to go and have a look." She really wanted to go there. Disregarding everything else, Yi Ranran had always been extremely passionate and persistent when it came to alchemy. It was understandable that she was tempted by Dahuang Swamp. But that place was really dangerous. Elder Xia frowned and didn't say anything for a long time. Yi Ranran looked eagerly at Chu Luiyue. The corners of Chu Luiyue's mouth lifted slightly. She looked at Yuchi Song and Elder Xia. "Let her go." Mobile users, please browse the Love Network for a better reading experience. Chapter 678. Ranran is very talented in alchemy, and she'll definitely benefit a lot from this trip. With me and Xiao Zhou here, we will definitely ensure her safety. Chu Luiyue said seriously. Yi Ranran quickly raised his hand. Pavilion Master, I'll cultivate hard and be careful. I won't be a burden to Lu Yu and Wanzhou. She wanted to go to Da Huang Swamp, but she wouldn't let herself be a burden to everyone. In that case she might as well not go. Seeing that the two elders were still hesitating, Chu Luiyue added. With Ranran around, the three of us can take care of each other. Yuchi Song looked at Elder Xiai. She's your disciple. You decide. Elder Xiai pondered for a long time before he finally agreed. Alright. But Ranran, you have to do what you said just now. Yi Ranran's combat strength was indeed not as good as Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou's. Her only advantage was probably her talent as a celestial physician. It would be good if she could really gain some experience on this trip. He just hoped that she wouldn't cause trouble to Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou. Yi Ranran's face was filled with joy. Thank you, Master. Thank you, Pavilion Master. Elder Xiai laughed. You should be thanking Lu Yu. We don't have much time left. You'd better prepare yourselves in the next 2 days. They nodded in agreement. Chu Luiyue rose to his feet and left with Chang Wanzhou and Yi Ranran to discuss the departure. After they left, Elder Xiai looked at Yuchi Song with a much more serious expression. Pavilion Master, have you heard about what happened in the Jiang mansion in Xiling City in the past 2 days? Yuchi Song asked. You mean, the assassination attempt on Jiang Yuqing? Elder Xiai nodded, then shook his head. Jiang Yuqing has offended a lot of people. It's normal for someone to attack him. But it was rumored that Jiang Yuqing had gathered his former subordinates, and that person had mixed in and almost succeeded. Pavilion Master, do you know that the people he called to the Jiang mansion that day were actually the people who followed him to the southern border? Yuchi Song nodded. I know. Speaking of which, he did it for me to see. To be precise, it's for the Chongshu Pavilion. Elder Xiai's eyes widened. You mean, I went to look for him earlier and told him about the Chaos Yuan gravel. He tried his best to clear his name and said that he would help investigate the matter. For this reason he gathered all those people together. He seems to have kept a low profile, but in fact if someone investigated they would have found out. So that's how it is. In this way no one will be alarmed and he will show that he wants to help you find out the truth. This Jiang Yuqing is really thoughtful. He's always been like this. He's never been at a disadvantage. Yuchi Song's tone was indifferent, but there was a hint of sarcasm in his eyes. However, the fact that someone tried to assassinate him should be an accident. He probably didn't expect that he would be ambushed in his own home. Elder Xiai asked curiously, didn't you say that the assassin failed to hurt him? Yuchi Song sneered. If that person didn't succeed, would Jiang Yuqing be so exasperated that he sent people to search Xiling City overnight? In the past 2 days he had almost turned the entire city upside down. If he hadn't suffered a loss, he wouldn't have done this at this time. After all, he had just set the date of his wedding with the third princess. It was really inappropriate for him to do this. You're right. Elder Xiai chuckled. I just don't know who did it. Someone who could take advantage of Jiang Yuqing's subordinates must not be an ordinary person. I'm really curious about Jiang Yuqing's injuries. Yuchi Song's eyes flickered with a hint of coldness. He brought this upon himself. Chu Luiyue returned to her room and cultivated in peace. After breaking through to the 5th stage, she clearly felt that her 5 senses were much more sensitive than before. After unlocking the 5 treasures, her cultivation speed was also much faster than before. This made Chu Luiyue feel much more at ease. After all, one's strength was what gave them confidence. After circulating the force in her body for 1 cycle, Chu Luiyue's entire person became energized. She was even looking forward to the trip to Da Huang Swamp. At this thought, she carefully checked the things that 36 respected Elder Ming and Rong Xiu had given her. With just a glance he really found quite a few good things. In any case, they were more than enough to save her life if she encountered any danger. Chu Luiyue took out a bronze disc. This thing seems to be able to teleport? Chu Luiyue didn't think much of it at the time, but now that she took it out, she remembered that it was actually very valuable. More importantly, it was priceless. Even if you had the money, you might not be able to buy it. According to its level, the distance it could teleport was also different. Chu Luiyue looked at the bronze disc in her hand. It was only the size of a palm and was heavy when she picked it up. There were already rust spots on it. It was obvious that it had not been used for a long time. I wonder how far this thing can teleport. Chu Luiyue was curious. She wiped off the dust on it and injected a trace of origin power. The bronze disc did not move at all. Chu Luiyue was a little puzzled. As long as it was an origin tool, there would be some movement when origin power was injected. However, this thing did not even have the slightest movement. She poured in even more origin power. This time she used 50% of her strength. The bronze disc still did not change at all. Chu Luiyue was originally just curious, but now her fighting spirit was stimulated. She didn't believe that she couldn't even open a bronze disc like this. Thus, she took a deep breath and injected 100% of her origin power into it. Crack. A crisp shattering sound was suddenly heard. Chu Luiyue was stunned. She wouldn't break it, would she? This was given to me by someone. If I broke it just like that. Chu Luiyue quickly stopped and put the thing in front of her eyes to take a closer look. There was an extremely small crack in the middle of the bronze disc. It's really broken. Chu Luiyue felt a headache coming on. Just as she was thinking about how to repair this thing, a bright stream of light suddenly flashed through the gap. It disappeared in an instant. If Chu Luiyue was not staring at it closely, she would not have noticed it. Chu Luiyue frowned and stared at the crack for a while. This black seems a little off. Chu Luiyue's mind raced. In the end, she chose to continue injecting her origin power into it. Crack. The crack became even bigger. The light inside also flashed more frequently. Chu Luiyue continued to inject her origin power into it. After an unknown period of time, a piece of bronze suddenly shattered and fell. Something inside suddenly protruded. Chu Luiyue took a closer look and was stunned. This is actually a petal? Of course, this petal was not real. It was carved out of a transparent crystal. Although it was transparent at first glance, it was overflowing with light and color. It was extremely magnificent. The entire bronze disc was filled with cracks. It was as if a layer of bronze skin was protruding. Chu Luiyue injected another strand of origin power. Bang. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 679. The layer of bronze on top fell off in an instant. A few petals rose up one after another. Chu Luiyue widened her eyes slightly and looked at a blooming transparent crystal peach blossom. The petals were oval with needles on the edge and a few stamens in the middle. It was indeed a peach blossom. After shaking off all the bronze on the surface, all that was left was a crystal peach blossom that was cold to the touch, clear and beautiful. Chu Luiyue did not know whether to laugh or cry. So this is what this seemingly rough bronze disc looks like inside? I wonder how 36 respected Elder Ming kept it. It's actually placed like this? Chu Luiyue played with the thing in her hand. Could teleport. But how was this thing used? Suddenly the petals closed slightly. A subtle touch was felt. In the next moment, Chu Luiyue seemed to have injected a stream of force into it subconsciously. The stamen swayed gently and cut her slender fingers. The dark red blood instantly seeped into the transparent crystal and quickly dyed it pink. Chu Luiyue did the whole process smoothly. Seeing this scene, she did not have any fear in her heart. She just continued to stare at it. Then a stream of light flashed and the crystal peach blossom disappeared instantly. Chu Luiyue felt a pain in her wrist. She looked down and saw a pink peach blossom mark on the inner side of her left wrist. The imprint was only the size of a fingernail and it was a light pink color. It was vivid and lifelike on the side of her fair and delicate wrist. It recognized me as its master? Chu Luiyue felt a little strange. She did not know what this thing was, but it had inexplicably turned into a peach blossom mark on her wrist. With a thought, she let the force in her body surge toward the peach blossom mark. A white light flashed. A sense of emptiness came. Chu Luiyue's figure disappeared on the spot. Darkness flashed in front of her eyes and her body fell down as if it was being dragged by something. However, this feeling only lasted for a short while. Soon, Chu Luiyue's feet seemed to have stepped on solid ground. The darkness before his eyes gradually dissipated. Chu Luiyue closed his eyes and looked at the scene in front of him. This look almost made her heart jump out of her chest. Because this was her zither room. She loved this place very much in her previous life. Everything inside was arranged according to her preferences. With just one look, she could confirm that this was indeed her zither room. Bookshelf, desk, guqin. Chu Luiyue was shaken to the core when he came to this place and saw everything that he was so familiar with. The blood in his body seemed to have stopped flowing at this moment. In her mind, a rare blank appeared. For a moment, she did not know what to do. After a while, she took a deep breath and gradually calmed down the emotions in her heart. At the same time, a question popped up in his mind. The peach blossom crystal stone could indeed teleport, but how did it bring her here? She had thought of many places before, but she never would have thought that it would be here. Was it because she subconsciously wanted to come here? It's good that you're here. The voice of the legendary three-eyed eagle suddenly rang out. The purple gold Bodhi leaf is right here. Chu Luiyue was taken aback. Really? Are you sure? She knew the entire space of this zither room very well. She didn't remember putting the purple gold Bodhi leaf here. But the legendary three-eyed eagle was very sure, yes. And fortunately, because you have a contract with me, your body is tainted with the aura of the legendary three-eyed eagle clan. The purple gold Bodhi leaf is not alert at this time, so it's a good time to take it away. Chu Luiyue looked around, then, where is that thing? Since she was already here, of course she had to seize the opportunity. If she followed the normal procedure, she didn't know when she would be able to enter this place. Now that she was here, Chu Luiyue couldn't care less about her sadness. Her mind was full of thoughts of finding the purple gold Bodhi leaf. It's in that guqin. The legendary three-eyed eagle quickly said. Chu Luiyue was stunned. What? Really, she would never have thought that the legendary purple gold Bodhi leaf was hidden in her phoenix-tailed guqin? You mean, that thing is hidden under the guqin, right? Chu Luiyue said uncertainly, her voice inexplicably weak. No, it's in that guqin. The corners of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched fiercely. Do I have to split this guqin open and take the purple gold Bodhi leaf? One must know that this was an extremely precious guqin that she had always cherished. She really couldn't bear to destroy it now. Moreover, although this guqin looked delicate, it was actually made of extremely hard wood. With her current strength, it would take her a lot of effort to split it open. Most importantly, Jiang Yuqing had guarded this place very tightly. If she really caused a commotion, it would probably cause a lot of trouble. The legendary three-eyed eagle said, "There's no need for that. The purple gold Bodhi leaf is sentient. It must have chosen to stay here because it likes it. We just have to lure it out." Chu Luiyue inwardly heaved a sigh of relief. Then how do we lure it out? The purple gold Bodhi is the divine tree of the legendary three-eyed eagle clan. There is an indescribable attraction between our clan and it. Therefore I can do it myself. That's even better. Chu Luiyue nodded in agreement while thinking to herself that this purple gold Bodhi was indeed a divine tree. Even a single leaf was so difficult to deal with. A black phantom slowly appeared in front of Chu Luiyue. In order not to attract attention, it was much smaller than usual, about the size of an ordinary eagle. When it spread its wings, it was just as long as the guqin. The legendary three-eyed eagle hovered in the air, looking down at the guqin from above. A heavy and majestic aura gradually emanated from its body, enveloping the guqin. Something seemed to flash on the body of the guqin. But Chu Luiyue didn't see it clearly. Then the third eye of the legendary three-eyed eagle suddenly opened. At the same time, a strange fluctuation suddenly appeared on the body of the guqin. It was as if something was running across it. Chu Luiyue's mind stirred and he looked carefully. He saw that the fluctuation was rolling back and forth like a small wave. Something seemed to want to run out, but because the entire guqin had been sealed by the legendary three-eyed eagle's aura, it could only run back and forth like this. Gradually, the fluctuation became smaller. That thing finally revealed its true appearance. A purple gold leaf. It floated back and forth on the guqin, shining all over. Chu Luiyue exclaimed in his heart, "So this is the legendary purple gold Bodhi leaf." It looked like a leaf, but in fact it was more like an intelligent spirit. The third eye of the legendary three-eyed eagle stared at the purple gold Bodhi leaf and was about to put it away. A series of footsteps suddenly came from outside the door. "Greetings, eldest young master." Chu Luiyue was shocked. Why did Jiang Yuqing suddenly come? Digression, 6 o'clock. Tomorrow we will resume 5 chapters together. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 680. Jiang Yuqing's voice sounded faintly. "I'm just here to take a look as usual. All of you can leave." "Yes." From the sound of it, it seemed that the guard in charge of guarding had left. Jiang Yuqing took out the key and opened the door. Creak. Jiang Yuqing walked into the room and turned around to close the door. The zither room was as quiet as ever. He looked around. Everything was still the same as before. It was as if nothing had happened. Jiang Yuqing's gaze finally fell on the zither. The broken string had not been repaired yet. Scene after scene replayed in his mind as if it had happened yesterday. It was incomparably vivid. Jiang Yuqing's expression gradually turned cold. He retracted his gaze, walked to the table at the side and sat down. Then he closed his eyes and let out a long breath. He didn't sleep well last night and had nightmares. It was different from the pain of being burned in a sea of fire. This time, the weather in the dream was good and a gentle breeze blew. was originally very good. Except for the words that person said. She said that she had someone she liked. In the dream, Jiang Yuqing heard himself asking over and over again who that person was. He also heard himself repeating that this engagement could not be called off. Actually, at that time he and xuanhuan hadn't been engaged yet. Both sides only had this intention, but nothing had been done yet. Sooner or later, the princess would ascend the throne, and sooner or later she would need an engagement. In the entire Tianling dynasty, countless young talents admired her. But in the end she chose him. Perhaps it was because of his father's identity, or perhaps it was because he was outstanding in all aspects. The world said that he and the princess were in love with each other, but he knew that wasn't the case. That person, born to be noble, perfect and flawless. Except, she didn't love him. It seemed that the princess treated him very well, but in reality she treated everyone very well. Therefore, in Jiang Yuqing's opinion, there was nothing special about it. This even made him feel a little disgusted. But no matter what he did, there seemed to be an invisible barrier around her. It could not be seen or touched, but it truly existed. He thought that no one would be able to get close to her or touch her, so he comforted himself that if he were to marry her, he would be closer to her than others. This wasn't bad either. It was not until that day that he realized he was wrong. In this world, there was someone who could easily enter her heart. And that person wasn't him. In the dream he was constantly suspicious and questioning, and his attitude was intense. But in reality that was not what he had done on that day. He was only surprised for a moment before he calmly asked who that person was. However, even now he still had no idea who that person was. At the end of the day he only smiled and said, "All right." However, in the end they still entered into a marriage contract. Jiang Yuqing rubbed his eyebrows and glanced at the guqin. Suddenly his eyes narrowed. Soon after he quickly got up and walked to the side of the zither. At first glance the zither didn't seem to have changed. But, Jiang Yuqing stared intently at a certain spot on the zither. When did a purple gold color appear here? He would come to take a look at this zither almost every once in a while. Almost no one was more familiar with it than him. He remembered clearly that such a mark had never appeared on it before. In fact, it wasn't there the last time he came. He stretched out his hand and reached for the zither. Suddenly, a cold wind came from behind. Alarm bells rang in his heart and he immediately turned around. A huge black phantom pounced over. It directly knocked him to the side. Before he could see the other party's appearance clearly, he was already thrown to the ground. At the same time, a black figure suddenly appeared behind the cabinet on the other side. Jiang Yuqing's eyes suddenly widened. He actually didn't notice that there was someone in this room just now. He saw that black figure directly hugging the zither in his arms. Jiang Yuqing said angrily, "How dare you?" He held his breath, flipped over and pulled out his saber. Then he slashed straight at that person. The saber slashed down. That person's figure actually disappeared on the spot in an instant. Jiang Yuqing's saber missed. He was shocked and subconsciously looked back. However, he only saw a huge wing sweep past his eyes. Then, it also disappeared in an instant. Everything happened in an instant. By the time Jiang Yuqing reacted, there was no one else in the room other than him. The blood in his chest was surging. When the huge black figure pounced on him just now, it gave him a heavy blow. But how could he care about that at this moment? The zither had been stolen. Right in front of his eyes. Jiang Yuqing couldn't believe it. "Guards! Guards!" he shouted angrily. The guards outside heard the sound and hurriedly rushed over. "Eldest young master. What's wrong? What's wrong? Tell me what's wrong." Jiang Yuqing swallowed the blood in his mouth. Because of his anger, his face was flushed red and his veins were bulging. His facial features looked a little ferocious. "I told you to guard this zither room well. What did you do? How could you let someone sneak in without a sound? What's the use of having you?" When the guards saw this, they were all shocked and immediately knelt down. "Eldest young master, we've been guarding here all this time. We've never let anyone in." Jiang Yuqing recalled the scene of that person disappearing just now. It didn't seem to cause any fluctuations in the void. Instead, it disappeared in an instant. This kind of situation. It didn't seem to be an ordinary method. "Are you sure that you've been guarding outside the door all this time? No one came in and you didn't notice any movements?" Jiang Yuqing asked sternly. The guards trembled with fear. What this subordinate said is true. Looking at the shocked and terrified expressions on the guards' faces, Jiang Yuqing also believed them a little. But, in this way it would undoubtedly be more difficult to find out who that person was. And those huge black wings, He didn't seem to have seen such a magical beast before. You guys go down first. Don't say a word about what happened today, Jianghu said with an ugly expression. The guards looked at each other. Eldest young master was so angry. Was he going to let them go just like that? Jianghu glanced at them. What don't you understand? This subordinate will remember. After saying that, the guards hurriedly left. After they left, Jianghu looked at the place where the zither was placed. There was nothing on it. Everyone knew that the zither room in Thousand View Garden was one of the Empress concubine's favorite places when she was alive. If the news of the zither being stolen spread, someone would definitely use this matter to make a fuss. At that time, he who had been in charge of guarding this zither room would definitely become the target of public criticism. Therefore, he had to investigate this matter himself. Thinking of this, he glanced in the direction where the guards left, and a hint of killing intent flashed in his eyes. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 681. When Chu Luiyue opened her eyes again, she had already returned to her room in the Chongshu Pavilion. After confirming that she had returned safely, Chu Luiyue let out a long sigh of relief. That was close. She was almost discovered by Jianghu just now. If she was a step later, who would have thought that Jianghu would suddenly go to the zither room at this time? She took off her black robe and asked the legendary three-eyed eagle, "What's the matter? He didn't see you just now, did he?" "No." The voice of the legendary three-eyed eagle was as calm and indifferent as ever, with a trace of contempt. "He's just strong in appearance." Jianghu reaction was simply terrible compared to a normal warrior of the same level. There must be something wrong with his body. Although the legendary three-eyed eagle didn't have a physical body now, it was still a divine beast after all. Moreover, after contracting with Chu Luiyue, its strength had been recovering. Although it was slow, its aura was indeed strengthening. It wouldn't be a problem to deal with Jianghu. Chu Luiyue was relieved when she heard this. After listening to the analysis of the legendary three-eyed eagle, she couldn't help but sneer. "I've also sensed it. His strength is indeed much weaker than before. It seems that the matter of the Chaos Yuan gravel was indeed done by him. Although I don't know what method he used to make it seem that his realm hasn't changed at all, his strength has clearly regressed." In addition to the bloody hole that she had sent out earlier, the current Jianghu body was probably in a mess. However, this thing is really useful. After such a long journey back and forth, the force in my body only consumed a little. As Chu Luiyue spoke, she looked at the peach blossom mark on the inner side of her left wrist. The peach blossoms were shining and blooming gently. Although she didn't know how this thing suddenly brought her to the zither room, being able to return safely and smoothly was enough to prove its ability. This thing was indeed much more useful than she had expected. The next time I see 36th Elder Ming, I have to thank him properly. After saying that, Chu Luiyue once again confirmed that the doors and windows were locked and that no one would disturb her. Only then did she take out the zither from her universe ring and carefully placed it in front of her. She was about to subdue the purple gold Bodhi leaf just now, but Jianghu came and had to stop. Looking at the zither, Chu Luiyue's feelings were complicated. She really didn't expect that she would bring it back so inexplicably. Jianghu didn't dare to make this matter public, so she wasn't worried that he would investigate it openly. After thinking for a while, Chu Luiyue collected her thoughts and prepared to find the purplish gold Buddha leaf again. He looked up, down, left and right and finally saw a purple gold color in the corner. It was as if someone had used a brush to lightly draw a line on it, and it was brilliant. That wisp of purple gold light swayed slightly, as if it was restless and wanted to escape. However, it was because she was Jiang, had escaped. Yes, this was a seal that the legendary three-eyed eagle had hurriedly placed on him. Chu Luiyue focused her eyes. "Let's begin." Crush. The legendary three-eyed eagle appeared again. The huge black figure was suspended in midair. A powerful pressure filled the entire room. The third eye of the legendary three-eyed eagle suddenly opened. The layer of black on the zither quickly dissipated. A purple gold leaf suddenly leaped out from within. A red light shot out of the legendary three-eyed eagle's eye. Bang! The purple gold leaf was instantly wrapped up. It couldn't move. At a glance, the outer layer was oval in color. It was clear and translucent, and it looked like a piece of amber. Chu Luiyue reached out and took the item. It was slightly warm to the touch and emitted a faint leaf fragrance. Holding it in her hand, she could clearly feel the aura and power that was full of vitality. The force in Chu Liyue's body seemed to be attracted by this power and gradually increased its flow speed. This purple gold Bodhi leaf is so powerful? Chu Liyue was shocked and her eyes widened slightly. Just this purple gold Bodhi leaf alone contained more energy than almost all the medicinal herbs she had ever seen. This is the leaf of a divine tree. Normal herbs can't be compared to it. There was a hint of pride in the legendary three-eyed eagle's voice. To be worshipped as a divine tree by the legendary three-eyed eagle clan, it was naturally extraordinary. Chu Liyue looked at the small ball in her hand. So, it's temporarily locked up? That's right. When I find the rest of the items, I can rebuild my body. Even the calm and indifferent legendary three-eyed eagle could not hide its excitement when talking about this. It had been trapped in the heavenly square cauldron for 1,000 years. It had thought that it would be tortured and destroyed by the karmic fire, but it had not expected that it would be reborn one day. Logically speaking, it was impossible for the purple gold Bodhi leaf to appear in a place like the Tianling dynasty. However, it had appeared. If this was not fate, then what was it? Chu Liyue was also very happy that the legendary three-eyed eagle was one step closer to restoring its body. However, she also had a question in her heart. How did this purple gold Bodhi leaf appear in this guqin? She had not told the legendary three-eyed eagle her true identity. Therefore, it did not know that this guqin was originally hers. She had played this guqin for more than 10 years, but she did not know that there was a purple gold Bodhi leaf hidden in it. Could it be that it was hidden so well that even she did not notice it? After all, if not for the legendary three-eyed eagle's reminder, she would not have known about it. This purple gold Bodhi leaf should have been in this guqin for several years. As for who put it there, I don't know. Chu Liyue was a little surprised. You're saying that someone deliberately put it in there? Of course. There are only 2 purple gold Bodhi trees in the world. One is in my clan and the other is in the Far East. And that place is more than 10,000 miles away from here. It is impossible for such a small purple gold Bodhi leaf to arrive here alone. Therefore, someone must have deliberately brought it here. Chu Liyue frowned slightly. A few years? Why did she not know that there was an extra purple gold Bodhi leaf in here? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 682. After thinking for a while, Chu Liyue still could not come up with an answer. In the end, she could only put this matter aside for the time being. After carefully putting away the purple gold Bodhi leaf, she once again entered into a state of cultivation. 2 days passed in a hurry. On the morning of the 3rd day, Chu Liyue had just completed a cycle when she heard Yi Ranran's voice from outside. Liyu, we should set off. Chu Liyue opened her eyes. Her eyes were clear, and there seemed to be light flickering in the depths of her eyes. After unlocking the 5 treasures, not only did her cultivation speed increase by a lot, even the force in her body was purer than before. She clenched her fists and stretched her muscles and bones. She could faintly hear the sound of bones cracking. This long-awaited feeling of being filled with power made Chu Liyue feel refreshed. She walked over to open the door. Yi Ranran and Xuanhuan were already waiting for her. Let's go. After the few of them went down the mountain, they went straight to Pingliang Square. They were going to Dahuang Swamp from there. Xiling City, which had always been bustling, seemed to have become somewhat solemn today. There were even fewer people on the streets. When they arrived at Pingliang Square, they realized that there were even fewer people here. This was because the Black Cavalry had already imposed martial law in advance. In the huge square, several teleportation portals were temporarily closed. Only the one in the center was open. Beside the teleportation portal, there were 1,000 Black Cavalry troops ready to set off. At the front of the Black Cavalry was a young man in black armor. His shoulders and back were straight, and his whole body exuded a strong murderous aura. It was Mu Qinghe. Although he was a general in Xiling City, most of the time he wore casual clothes. Now that he suddenly put on his armor, the fierce and biting cold aura that he had fought in battles with thousands of people was instantly obvious. It was daunting. Yi Ranran said in a low voice, Vice Admiral Mu looks different today. As expected of the Lieutenant General of the Black Cavalry. To be able to rise rapidly and reach his current position in a short 10 years, he was indeed capable. Chu Liyue stared at her for a moment before looking away. His eyes were calm. The current Mu Qinghe no longer had anything to do with her. Yi Ranran glanced at her. Seeing that her reaction was ordinary, she felt a little strange. Liyu, aren't you close to Vice Admiral Mu? Should I go and say hello? Chu Liyue smiled. The 3rd princess and the others will be here soon. Isn't this a little inappropriate? Yuranran thought about it and agreed. After all, there was still 1,000 black cavalry behind them. Then let's go to the side and wait? I think some people from the other sects have already arrived. Chu Luiyue nodded. I don't mean anything else. Compared to before, her attitude towards Chu Luiyue had changed quite a bit. This was a world where strength was respected after all. Chu Luiyue first took first place in the Wanzheng competition and then won 3 rounds in a row at the sect competition. Ning Jiaojiao was present at that time. Even if she was full of dissatisfaction, she had to admit that Chu Luiyue's strength was indeed not to be underestimated. Before coming out this time, her father, Ning Binghai, specially instructed her not to cause trouble. Ning Jiaojiao had suffered before, so she naturally didn't dare to be too presumptuous now. She was just talking nonsense. Of course, no one knew what she was thinking. Chu Luiyue saw that she had retreated in the face of difficulties, so he didn't care too much. The corners of his lips curled up and he didn't say anything. Only then did Ning Jiaojiao secretly heave a sigh of relief. Suddenly, her gaze focused and she couldn't help but ask, "You broke through to a stage 5 warrior?" Chu Luiyue glanced at her indifferently. Wasn't it obvious? Only then did Ning Jiaojiao realize that she had lost her composure. She bit her lip and looked away. However, she was still a little shocked in her heart. How long had Chu Luiyue been in Xiling? She actually broke through from a stage 3 warrior to a stage 5 warrior? Didn't that mean that she was even stronger? Not only Ning Jiaojiao but the people standing at the side were also somewhat shocked. What's there to be proud of when you're a stage 5 warrior? A cold voice with a hint of mockery came from behind. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 683. The surroundings fell silent for a moment. Chu Luiyue turned around and saw that it was the people from the Purple Shao Sword sect. This was said by the man in the lead. He looked to be in his late 20s. He was tall and thin, had an ordinary face, and the ends of his hair were faintly purple. Song Qingyan? Chu Luiyue recognized him. This person was the eldest son of the Purple Shao Sword sect master, Song Lian. He was also the young master of the sect. His talent was not bad. If he remembered correctly, he had just broken through to the upper stage of the 7th stage 2 years ago. From the looks of it, he didn't continue to break through. However, with his realm and strength, it was normal for him to not take the 5th stage Chu Luiyue seriously. Senior brother Qingyan, he's the champion of the Wanzheng competition. Moreover, he won against 3 people in the sect competition. It's inevitable that he's a little arrogant. Chu Luiyue glanced at the woman behind him. Well, she was also an acquaintance. Yang Qin. She seemed to be persuading Song Qingyan, but she couldn't hide the envy in her eyes. Chu Luiyue looked innocent. I was standing here just now. I don't think I said anything. Why are you so smug? Yang Qin choked. Song Qingyan was still the experienced one. He scanned Chu Luiyue from head to toe as if he didn't hear her. It's just a small fight. Qin, when you see more of the world in the future, you naturally won't take this seriously. Cultivate well in the future. How can you lose to her? Chu Luiyue raised his brows and secretly admired her. It had only been a short while, but Yang Qin was already doing so well in the Purple Shao Sword sect. Even Song Qingyan spoke to her like this. In his memory, Song Qingyan was very arrogant because of his identity as the young master of the Purple Shao Sword sect. Now, it seemed that this habit hadn't changed at all. Yang Qin seemed to be blushing. Thank you for your praise, senior brother Qingyan. Song Qingyan looked at her and smiled. He patted her arm and walked to the other side. Yi Ranran was furious and wanted to go forward to argue with them. Chu Luiyue pulled her back and shook his head gently. Yi Ranran was furious. Liu, that person said that to you. Are you going to just let it go? Chu Luiyue smiled. It's just a few words. You didn't lose anything. Why bother with them? I don't know how many people have said this about me in private. Don't tell me that I'm going to investigate every single one of them. But they did it in front of us. Everyone's almost here. Let's keep a low profile so as to avoid unnecessary trouble. All right. Yi Ranran seemed to be holding back his anger, but seeing Chu Luiyue's firm attitude, he had no choice but to obey. She glanced at Song Qingyan and whispered, What's so good about being the young master of the Purple Shao Sword sect? When he was your age, Liu, he was a far cry from you. The corners of Chu Luiyue's lips lifted slightly. I know. Song Qingyan was a few years older than her. Back then he was not convinced by her and challenged her one-on-one. In the end, Song Qingyan was beaten so badly that he took a detour when he saw her. He didn't even attend the regular palace banquet. Xuanhuan glanced at Song Qingyan coldly and retracted his gaze. Song Qingyan faintly felt a chill run down his spine. When he looked back, he did not discover anything. On the other hand, Chu Luiyue and the other two were whispering something. Their expressions were calm and they even laughed occasionally. It was as if they didn't take his words seriously at all. Song Qingyan sneered. "Qing, are you right? This Chu Luiyue isn't just a little arrogant. When we reach Dahuang Swamp, she'll be in trouble." Yang Qin lowered her head and didn't say anything. "Luyu?" Surprised cheers sounded. Chu Luiyue looked over with a smile on his face. A familiar face appeared in front of him. It was Mu Hongyu. She had originally come with the people from Dragon Teeth Mountain, but when she saw Chu Luiyue from afar, she couldn't help but rush over first. "I knew you would go too. Only the three of you are going to Chongshu Pavilion?" Mu Hongyu had been busy cultivating with Xianxia these few days, so she didn't know anything about the outside world. Chu Luiyue nodded. "Senior brothers and senior sisters can't find the time, so they sent the three of us." A sneer came from the side. Song Qingyan had a mocking expression as he said to the person beside him, "Hey, you make it sound nice. Who doesn't know that Chongshu Pavilion is like this because they can't send anyone?" A Chongshu Pavilion with less than 100 people was actually ranked as one of the 4 major sects with them. It really made him feel proud. The smile on Chu Luiyue's face faded slightly. Mu Hongyu had already spoken with a cold smile. "Isn't it enough to send the 3 of them? I remember that many people here have participated in the sect conference, right? Could it be that any of you defeated Luyu?" Of course, not everyone at the sect conference could fight with Chu Luiyue. But who didn't know that she had defeated a rank 6 warrior? There were quite a number of people present who weren't even rank 6 warriors. Chu Luiyue was indeed strong. There was no doubt about that. The surroundings suddenly became much quieter. Song Qingyan frowned. "Who are you? How dare you be impudent in front of me?" Yang Qiner whispered. "Senior brother Qingyan, she's that faint yuan body?" Song Qingyan narrowed his eyes. "The slave that Jian Fengqi spent 6 million white crystal coins to buy?" As soon as this was said, everyone looked over with subtle expressions. Everyone could hear the provocation in this sentence. In the Tianling dynasty, the status of a slave was inferior, but Mu Hongyu had the faint yuan body, so most people were more envious and jealous. With such a physique, would she still be afraid of being looked down upon when she became a powerhouse in the future? But if this identity was brought out alone, it was obvious that it was deliberately embarrassing. Chu Luiyue's face turned cold. A handsome young man had already walked forward and said calmly, "Hongyu is our disciple. Hongyu is the last disciple of our hill master. I wonder if young Master Song has any questions?" Song Qingyan's expression changed slightly. The surrounding people also revealed looks of astonishment. Mu Hongyu was actually Xianxia's disciple? If that was the case, then her identity would be extraordinary. One had to know that Xianxia had only accepted 3 disciples in all these years. Mu Hongyu was the 4th. Xianxia didn't seem to care about her identity as a slave. And since he was willing to do so, it was enough to show how much he valued Mu Hongyu. In other words, he was Mu Hongyu's backer. Although Song Qingyan had always been arrogant and looked down on others, he wasn't stupid. He knew who he could offend and who he couldn't. Dragon Teeth Mountain's Xianxia was an extremely protective person. Even his father didn't dare to go against Xianxia, let alone him. He snorted coldly, waved his sleeves fiercely, and turned his face away. The young man walked in front of Chu Luiyue with a gentle and polite smile. "Miss Chu, I'm Zhu Hong. Before we came, the mountain master and young master instructed us to take care of you. I wonder if you're willing to come with us on this trip to Dahuang Swamp?" Xianxia and Jian Fengqi? Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment. Looking at Zhu Hong and the others' sincere expressions, her eyebrows curved. "Sure. Thank you in advance." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Although the Great Desolate Swamp had supreme treasures, it was also extremely dangerous. I am truly grateful that all of you are willing to come along and lend me a hand. His words were spoken in a polite manner. If anyone can help this consort find the treasure she needs, this consort will definitely reward them handsomely. Apart from those few items, all the items that you find will belong to you. Hearing this, many people's eyes began to shine with desire. Those who dared to explore the Great Desolate Swamp all had this mentality. Now Xuanhuan said that apart from the items she wanted, the rest would belong to them. How could they not be excited? Many thanks to the third princess. Xuanhuan smiled. I hope that everyone will have a smooth journey and that this trip will not be in vain. Vice Admiral Mu, please. Mu Qinghe stepped forward and cupped his fists in salute. The 1,000 black cavalry will be divided into 2 teams. The first team will be in front and the second team will be behind. You must ensure the safety of the third princess and everyone else. As he spoke, he raised his right arm. The black guards behind him split into 2 neatly from the middle. The sound of iron boots stepping on the lapis lazuli ground was exceptionally powerful. The first team of 500 black cavalry walked onto the transportation formation. Then Xuanhuan and the others followed. Mu Qinghe stood beside her as if to protect her. Then the disciples of the various large sects followed. Finally, it was the second team of 500 black cavalry. The people standing around all knelt on one knee and said loudly, "Farewell, third princess. Activate." Mu Qinghe ordered. The transportation formation spun faster and faster. Then everyone's figures disappeared. The great desolate swamp was extremely far from the West Hill. Even if they used the transportation formation, it would take a lot of time. Fortunately, this transportation formation was specially built and maintained daily, so there were not too many spatial turbulences. Everyone was in the middle of it, but they were not affected much. Although there were many people, Mu Qinghe had arranged for people to carry water pearls that were specially used in the transportation formation. They easily dispelled the darkness and illuminated many people. Such water pearls were expensive to make. Ordinary people could not afford even one. But who was the third princess? 100 or so was considered a small number. Such a scale of travel made many people secretly envious. The third princess is indeed extraordinary. She uses these water pearls as if they are free. Who are you and who is the third princess? In a few months, the entire Tianling dynasty will be hers, let alone these water pearls. That's true. I heard that back then, when the Empress concubine went on an inspection tour, the scale seemed to be even bigger than this. It's a pity that the Empress concubine only brought the black cavalry back then, so we couldn't see anything. The Empress concubine's status is comparable to the current emperor. Even if she's a princess, she can still mobilize 100,000 black cavalry. The third princess hasn't. Naturally, she can't be compared. But that's all in the past. There's nothing to talk about. The people around were whispering. Their voices were very soft. But because Chu Luiyue had already mastered the 5 treasures, she could hear most of it. She faintly smiled, seemingly inadvertently raising her head to look. In front, Mu Qinghe was standing beside Xuanhuan and whispering something. It seemed like she was explaining the situation in Dahuang Swamp. Your Highness, we have to first reach the teleportation formation in Shijiang, and then go to Dahuang Swamp from there. Within Dahuang Swamp, the miasma extends for hundreds of miles. We have to. Mu Qinghe said bit by bit, and Xuanhuan also listened carefully. From where Chu Luiyue was, she couldn't see the expression on Xuanhuan's face, but she could see her nodding from time to time. She seemed to be very serious. The corner of Chu Luiyue's lips moved and she thought silently. Mu Qinghe's explanation was quite detailed. When she went to Dahuang Swamp back then, no one told her about all the dangers in such detail. She couldn't remember how many dangers she had encountered in the middle. What Mu Qinghe said was the experience she had gained from fighting in Dahuang Swamp for several years. It was also her experience. The world only knew that Mu Qinghe had volunteered to join the Black Cavalry. In 10 years she had made outstanding military contributions. In the end, she had suppressed the rebel army in Dahuang Swamp and held military power in her hands. She had made great contributions to stabilize the position of the princess. However, very few people knew that the princess had also entered Dahuang Swamp several times. The current Mu Qinghe was very powerful, but he wasn't this powerful from 10 years ago. Without Xuanhuan's secret help, he might have died in Dahuang Swamp long ago. But now these were all in the past. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 685. Chu Luiyue listened nonchalantly, and his mood was calm without any ripples. It sounded like nothing major had happened in Dahuang Swamp for the past 2 years. With the Black Cavalry stationed there, it was naturally much more stable than before. However, those people were in charge of guarding. This time, Xuanhuan was going there to find a few herbs and the legendary fiend's blood. Thus, it was naturally more convenient for her to bring some people along. Xuanhuan was indeed listening very seriously, and she almost remembered every word Mu Qing had said. She had never been to Dahuang Swamp before, and this was her first time. Rumors had it that the place was barren and dangerous, so she had no interest in it at all. If it weren't for the fact that she had to find a suitable place to carry out her plan, she might never step into Dahuang Swamp's land in her entire life. As for those legendary treasures and even the inheritance of the strong, why would the third princess of the Tianling dynasty care about these things? I will be promoted in a few months, and the entire Tianling dynasty will be mine then. Why should I risk my life in a place like Dahuang Swamp? Not mentioning the danger, I might not even find anything good there. Now that I'm listening to Mu Qinghe, I'll be more confident when the time comes. This is the general situation of Dahuang Swamp. If your highness has anything you don't understand, feel free to ask. The last general will definitely tell you everything he knows. After putting on the armor and leading the troops, Mu Qinghe's way of addressing herself changed. Xuanhuan curved her lips and smiled. I understand. Thank you, Vice Admiral Mu. If it weren't for you, this trip would have been very dangerous. Mu Qinghe lowered her head. Your Highness, you flatter me. This is what the last general should do. Vice Admiral Mu, you don't have to be humble. When we reach Dahuang Swamp, we might have to trouble you even more. Don't you think so, Yuqing? As she spoke, she looked at Jiang Yuqing at the side. However, Jiang Yuqing was thinking about something and actually fell into deep thought, so he didn't hear her. Xuanhuan was dazed. Yuqing? Yuqing? Jiang Yuqing came back to his senses and looked up at her. What happened? Xuanhuan frowned slightly when she saw that he seemed to have woken up from a dream. Along the way, for some reason, Jiang Yuqing seemed absent-minded. Mu Qinghe's words were so important, but he didn't listen? If he remembered correctly, Jiang Yuqing didn't seem to have been to the Great Desolate Swamp, right? He was such a cautious person. Logically speaking, he should be very concerned about these things. His nonchalant manner was indeed a little strange. Didn't you hear what Vice Admiral Mu said just now? Jiang Yuqing coughed and straightened his collar. Oh, Vice Admiral Mu has already told me about this. Xuanhuan was skeptical. Mu Qinghe was his woman, so it was normal for her to tell him this in advance. But he wasn't in the right state. Thinking of this, worry surfaced in her eyes. Yuqing, are you okay? Are you too tired these few days? I know that he's been looking for the person who tried to assassinate me recently. Could it be that he's like this because he's exhausted himself over this matter? Jiang Yuqing's eyes flickered, but he didn't admit or deny it. Maybe a little. But I've already handed the matters in Xiling City to Sun Qi and the rest. Xuanhuan looked at his expression and thought that she had guessed correctly. That's true. Jiang Yuqing is now in a high position, yet he was suddenly assassinated by an unknown person. Furthermore, he couldn't find the culprit even after searching for a few days. It's inevitable that his reputation will be tarnished. Sun Qi has always been good at doing things. Don't worry too much. Jiang Yuqing smiled and nodded. He glanced behind him without batting an eyelid, then quickly retracted his gaze. After a while, he suddenly asked, Do you remember? I remember that Mu Hongyu has a faint yuan body? Mu Qinghe nodded. Xuanhuan strangely asked, Why? What's the matter? Why did you suddenly mention her? Nothing. I'm just curious because I heard them say a few words when I came over just now. After all, such a physique hasn't appeared in this mainland for thousands of years. I heard that people with such a physique can casually travel through space? Yeah. Back then, Xianghal seemed to have spent quite a lot of effort to capture her. If it weren't so rare, why would Jian Fengqi bear to spend 6 million white crystals to bid for her? Even though Xuanhuan spent most of her time in the palace, she knew everything that happened outside. Actually, when she saw Mu Hongyu just now, she couldn't help but take a few more glances. But, other than looking a little cute and lively, I can't see anything special for the time being. However, I didn't expect Dragon Teeth Mountain's mountain master to take her in as a disciple. Xuanhuan's tone was calm. In her heart, she looked down on people who were born as slaves. However, Jianxia didn't value these things very much. Otherwise, he wouldn't have insisted on marrying that ordinary woman as his wife. Speaking of which, Jianxia and Jian Fengqi could be considered her benefactors. It seems that she has a good relationship with Chu Luiyue and the others? Xuanhuan frowned slightly. Mu Qinghe explained. Your Highness, eldest young master. Mu Hongyu is actually also from country Yaoqian. And they used to be students in the same academy. No wonder. Xuanhuan nodded in understanding. In her heart, she hated Mu Hongyu and Chu Luiyue even more. Jiang Yuqing looked at Mu Hongyu meaningfully. Could she be the person who broke into the zither room and stole the zither that day? After an unknown period of time, a ray of light finally appeared in the darkness ahead. "We're here," Xianxia said in a deep voice. Everyone quieted down and was somewhat nervous. The white light in front of them expanded rapidly. An exit finally appeared in front of everyone. The black cavalry at the front took the lead and walked out. Then xuanhuan and the others followed. Yiranran was a little worried but also a little excited. "Are we in Dahuang Swamp when we go out?" Chu Luiyue opened her mouth and wanted to say, "Not yet," but in the end she swallowed her words. The few of them followed the crowd and walked out. After a burst of force there was a lot of light in front of them. The white light in front of Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed, and she felt that her feet finally stepped on solid ground. She closed her eyes and waited for her eyes to adapt to the light before looking forward. A vast and boundless desert suffused with a dazzling golden color. The hills rose and fell and heat waves surged. Due to the blazing heat, even the void seemed to have become distorted. Exclamations could be heard around them. "So this is Dahuang Swamp," Xianxia said. "This is only the edge of Shijiang. The real Dahuang Swamp needs to be further in." The person who spoke quickly shut up awkwardly. Many people were shocked. This wasn't Dahuang Swamp? Then what was the real Dahuang Swamp like? Xianxia made a gesture. "Team 1. Open." The 500 black cavalry at the front immediately turned around and marched to the side. In a moment, they arrived about 500 steps away from the teleportation array. Everyone shouted in a low voice and attacked at the same time. In an instant, yellow sand flew everywhere. A huge teleportation array appeared in the desert. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly. "Oh, the teleportation array that she personally set up is still there." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 686. The surroundings were silent for a moment. Chu Luiyue turned around and saw that it was the people from the Purple Cloud Sword sect. This was said by the leader of the group. He looked to be in his late 20s. He was tall and thin with an ordinary face and the ends of his hair had a faint purple hue. Song Qingyan? Chu Luiyue recognized him. This person was the eldest son of the sect master of the Purple Cloud Sword sect, Song Lian. He was also the young master of the Purple Cloud Sword sect. His talent wasn't bad. If he remembered correctly, he had just broken through to the 7th rank 2 years ago. Now, it seemed like he didn't continue to break through. However, with his realm and strength, it was normal for him to look down on Chu Luiyue, who was only at the 5th rank. Senior brother Qingyan, he is the champion of the Wanzheng Association. Moreover, he won against 3 people in the sect meeting. It's inevitable for him to be a little arrogant. Chu Luiyue glanced at the woman who was speaking behind him. Right, she was also an acquaintance. Xianxia. She seemed to be persuading Song Qingyan, but she couldn't hide the envy in her eyes. Chu Luiyue looked innocent. "I was just standing here just now. I don't think I said anything. Why are you so smug?" Xianxia was speechless. Song Qingyan was still the old Taoist. He scanned Chu Luiyue from head to toe as if he didn't hear what she said. "It's just a small fight. When you see more of the world in the future, you will naturally not take this kind of seriously. If you cultivate well in the future, how could you lose to her?" Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows and secretly admired him. It hadn't been long, but Xianxia was already doing so well in the Purple Firmament Sword sect. Even Song Qingyan spoke to her like this. In her memory, Song Qingyan was very arrogant because of his identity as the young master of the Purple Firmament Sword sect. Now, it seemed that this bad habit hadn't changed at all. Xianxia seemed to blush. "Thank you for your praise, senior brother Qingyan." Song Qingyan looked at her and smiled. He patted her arm and led his men to the other side. Yiranran was furious and wanted to go forward to argue with them. Chu Luiyue pulled her back and shook his head gently. Yiranran was angry. "Luiyue, are you going to let that person off just like that?" Chu Luiyue smiled. "It's just a few words. I didn't lose anything. Why should I be calculative with them? I don't know how many people have said that about me in private. Am I going to pursue every single one of them? But they did it in front of me. Everyone is almost here. Let's keep a low profile to avoid more trouble." Yiranran seemed to be holding back her anger, but seeing Chu Luiyue's firm attitude, she could only listen. Yiranran felt like she was holding back her anger, but seeing Chu Luiyue's firm attitude, she could only obey. What's there to be proud of as the young master of the Purple Firmament Sword sect? When he was your age he was far inferior to you. When he was your age Liwei he was far worse than you. I know. Song Qingyan was a few years older than her. Back then he wasn't convinced of her strength and challenged her to a duel. Song Qingyan was a few years older than her. Back then he was not convinced of her strength and challenged her to a duel. Song Qingyan was a few years older than her. Back then he hadn't been convinced by her and had challenged her to a duel. Xuanhuan cast a cold glance at Song Qingyan and retracted his gaze. Song Qingyan felt a chill run down his spine. He looked back but didn't discover anything. Chu Luiyue and the other two were talking in low voices. Their expressions were calm and they even laughed occasionally. It was as if they didn't care about what he had said. Song Qingyan sneered. "Qing, are you right? This Chu Luiyue is really arrogant. When we reach the great desolate swamp she'll be in trouble." Yang Qin lowered her head and didn't say anything. "Luiyue." Cheers of surprise could be heard. Chu Luiyue looked over, her face full of smiles. A familiar face appeared in front of her. It was Mu Hongyu. She had originally come with the people from Dragon Tooth Mountain. However, when she saw Chu Luiyue from afar, she couldn't help but rush over first. "I knew you'd go as well. Are only the three of you from the Void Rush Pavilion going?" Mu Hongyu had been busy cultivating with Xianxia over the past few days. She didn't know anything about what was going on outside. Chu Luiyue nodded. "My senior brothers and sisters couldn't find the time, so they sent the three of us." A sneer could be heard from the side. Song Qingyan had a mocking look on his face as he said to the person beside him, "Hey, you make it sound so nice. Who doesn't know that the Void Rush Pavilion is like this because they can't send anyone?" The Void Rush Pavilion, which had less than 100 people, was actually on par with them as one of the four major sects. The smile on Chu Luiyue's face was slightly faint. However, Mu Hongyu had already sneered. "Isn't it enough to send the three of them? I remember that many of you here have participated in the sect conference, right? Could it be that any of you won against Luyu?" Of course, not everyone could fight against Chu Luiyue at the sect conference. However, who didn't know that she had defeated a rank 6 warrior? Among the people present, there were many who were not even rank 6 martial artists. Chu Luiyue was indeed strong. There was no doubt about that. The surroundings suddenly became much quieter. Song Qingyan frowned. "Who are you? How dare you be so presumptuous in front of me?" Yang Xener said in a low voice. "Senior brother Qingyan, she is that virtual essence body." Song Qingyan narrowed his eyes. "The slave that Jian Fengqi spent 6 million white crystal coins to buy?" As soon as he said that, everyone looked over with subtle expressions. Everyone could hear the provocation in this sentence. In the Tianling dynasty, slaves were of a lower status. However, Mu Hongyu had a virtual essence body, so most people were more envious and jealous of her. With such a body, would she still be afraid of being looked down upon when she became an expert in the future? However, if this identity was brought out alone, it was obvious that she was deliberately trying to embarrass people. Chu Luiyue's face turned cold. A handsome young man walked forward and said calmly, "Hongyu is the last disciple of our mountain master. Hongyu is our mountain chieftain's last disciple. May I know if young Lord Song has any questions?" Song Qingyan's expression changed slightly. The people around him were also surprised. Mu Hongyu was Xianxia's last disciple? If that was the case, then her identity was extraordinary. After so many years, Xianxia had only accepted 3 disciples. Mu Hongyu was the 4th. Xianxia didn't seem to care about her identity as a slave. Since he was willing to do this, it was enough to show how much he valued Mu Hongyu. In other words, he was Mu Hongyu's backer. Although Song Qingyan had always been arrogant and looked down on people, he wasn't stupid. He knew who he could offend and who he couldn't. Xianxia of the Dragon Tooth Mountain was an extremely protective person. Even his father didn't dare to go against Xianxia, let alone him. He snorted coldly, waved his sleeves and turned his face away. The young man walked in front of Chu Luiyue. He smiled warmly and politely. "Miss Chu, I am Zhu Hong. Before we came, the mountain master and the young master told us to take good care of you. Would you be willing to come with us on this trip to the great desolate swamp?" Xianxia and Jian Fengqi? Chu Luiyue froze for a moment. When she saw the sincere expressions on the faces of Zhu Hong and the others, her eyebrows curved. "All right. Thank you in advance. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the website." Chapter 687. She had used a special method to forcefully store the force in her body. Although it was quite a lot, it couldn't withstand such a long period of consumption. One had to know that she couldn't absorb the energy of heaven and earth and convert it into her own force. Who knew how long it would take for her to come out of the mystic forest? Just as xuanhuan was hesitating, dark clouds suddenly gathered in the distant sky. The originally clear sky quickly darkened. From afar, it looked like a drop of thick ink had suddenly spread out on a blue painting. Brr! An earth-shattering roar suddenly resounded through the forest. It made one's mind tremble. What's that? Xuanhuan faintly sensed a dangerous aura and asked. Wuxia took a look and said, that should be a high-level fiend about to break through. To be able to cause such a phenomenon, could it be a 9th-grade fiend? Although a normal high-level fiend's breakthrough would cause quite a commotion, it definitely wouldn't be to this extent. The dark clouds in the sky quickly gathered and expanded, beginning to cover the vast mystic forest. The last general has never seen such a situation before, but it should be a 9th-grade fiend. Jianghu, who was beside him, finally spoke. Xuanhuan's eyes lit up. The worry and uneasiness in her heart all dissipated, leaving only curiosity and desire. If that 9th-grade fiend could successfully break through, it would be a divine beast. By then, not only would she be able to obtain the divine beast's blood, but she would also be able to take the divine beast under her command. Once her Yuan meridian recovered, she would be able to form an official contract. To be able to command a divine beast, just thinking about it made her excited. One had to know that in the entire Tianling dynasty, apart from the Taizu, no one had ever formed a contract with a divine beast. Even Xuanhuan back then had only formed a contract with a 9th-grade 9-colored heavenly pheasant. It was still a step away from becoming a divine beast. And this step might seem simple, but it was actually a huge gap. If she could form a contract with a divine beast, she would be able to easily crush Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan slowly clenched her fists in her sleeves. Her throat was a little dry, and the blood in her body seemed to be flowing faster. Along the way, she had heard too many comments about Xuanhuan. No, it should be said that ever since she occupied this position, she had been compared to Xuanhuan. Whether it was her talent in cultivation, the realm she had reached, or even her appearance and demeanor, everything was unavoidable. And she was almost completely defeated. Even though Xuanhuan had died in an undignified manner, it was still irreplaceable in many people's eyes. What about her? Not only did he have to try his best to cover up his physical condition every day, but he also had to deal with all kinds of things that happened in the Tianling dynasty. He also had to be under the spotlight of Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan was like this when he was alive. She was already dead, but her soul still lingered around. Xuanhuan had had enough. This made her extremely eager to quickly recover her Yuan meridian and increase her strength. She wanted to prove to everyone that she was better than Xuanhuan. Such an opportunity is hard to come by. This time, I will definitely obtain the divine beast's blood for my father. With that said, Xuanhuan moved forward, heading straight for the direction where the dark clouds were gathering. Jianghu looked at the dark clouds in the sky. His expression froze for a moment before he followed Xuanhuan. Wuxia quickly led the way with his men. The group of people headed toward the mystic forest in a grandiose manner. After passing through the Great Triangle, the group entered the mystic forest. At first glance, this forest looked no different from an ordinary forest. However, because Wuxia had warned them of the dangers, everyone used their force to set up a barrier around themselves before entering the mystic forest. Chu Luiyue looked up at the lush forest. His eyes flickered slightly as he asked the legendary three-eyed eagle in his mind. Do you know what kind of demonic beast is breaking through in there? The legendary three-eyed eagle was a divine beast, so it should be able to sense this. It's quite far from here, and the other party seems to be hiding its aura on purpose. I can't tell what kind of demonic beast it is for now. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice was much lower and colder. However, to be able to hide its aura so thoroughly, it shouldn't be an ordinary person. Chu Luiyue was also a little surprised. It seemed that there was really an extraordinary existence in this mystic forest. She hid the expression in her eyes. Like the others, she used her force to set up a barrier around herself and walked forward. In the forest, there were thick piles of fallen leaves. Stepping on them, they made a squeaking sound. A gentle breeze blew over, causing the leaves to rustle. Other than these sounds, the entire forest was quiet. Many people couldn't hide their curiosity. As they walked, they looked around. At a glance, this mystic forest seemed no different from an ordinary forest. However, thinking of Wuxia's previous warning, everyone was still cautious, afraid that something would go wrong. After entering the lush forest, it was difficult to see the situation in the distance. However, the roars that came from time to time became clearer and clearer. This made xuanhuan feel a little relieved. They were indeed getting closer and closer. Why is it so quiet here? After walking for a distance, Jianghu was the first to sense that something was wrong and asked. Elder Qiushi stroked his beard and explained, probably because a 9th grade magical beast is about to break through here, so the other magical beasts are temporarily hiding? Rumor has it that when a magical beast of this level breaks through, it will summon Tianlei. Only by enduring it can it be considered a success and become a real divine beast. Ordinary magical beasts naturally have to be obedient. Elder Duanmu Chun beside him also nodded in agreement. Elder Qiushi is right. This kind of scene has only appeared in rumors. I didn't expect to encounter such a thing as soon as we arrived at the Great Desolate Swamp. I have to say that it's a great blessing. In this world there were countless people who wanted to see it but couldn't. Hearing this, Jianghu was relieved. I see. Elder Qiushi smiled and said, didn't Vice Admiral Mu also say that he has never seen such a scene? I think it's because Her Royal Highness the Third Princess disregarded the danger and came to find the medicine in person. That's why we just happened to make it in time. Xuanhuan was also in a good mood. As long as I can help father, I can do anything. Besides, with everyone accompanying me, I have even less fear. Now, as long as we can find that magical beast, wait for it to break through to become a divine beast, then take its blood and bring it back to father. At this moment, the sky above everyone's head suddenly darkened. Many people looked up. What's going on? Why did the sky suddenly turn dark? Could it be that the dark clouds have gathered here? It can't be so fast, right? Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the crowd. That tree is moving. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 688. A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Countless pairs of eyes followed that person's hand and saw a tree that was as thick as a person moving slowly to the right of the group. Upon closer inspection, there seemed to be something moving under the thick layer of leaves. And it was this movement that caused the tree to move to the side. Poof! A tree root that was as thick as an arm suddenly emerged from the fallen leaves. It turned out that there were several roots of the tree under the pile of leaves. Seeing this strange scene, everyone was dumbfounded. Mu Qinghe glanced at it and explained with a straight face, it's just a small matter. This is xuanhuan. Its roots are buried very shallowly underground, and it can move on its own under special circumstances. Everyone was enlightened. I see, Dahuang Swamp is indeed Dahuang Swamp, even the trees are different. That gave me a fright just now. I thought something big was going to happen. Wait a minute, didn't Lieutenant Mu just say that it would only move under special circumstances? So, is it doing this because the 9th grade fiend is about to break through? Other than the Black Cavalry, the disciples of the other sects were all discussing. Mu Hongyu was watching when she suddenly felt something and looked towards her arms. It was the golden mane bear cub that came out. It hugged Mu Hongyu's arm and shook its head uneasily, as if it was warning her about something. Song? What's wrong? Mu Hongyu asked curiously. The golden mane bear cub let out a low whimper and turned to look at the moving xuanhuan. It then started making a fuss in Mu Hongyu's arms again. Almost a year had passed and the golden mane bear cub had grown a lot. Mu Hongyu could barely hold it in her arms with its current size. If it kept moving around, Mu Hongyu wouldn't be able to handle it. She tried to comfort Song in her arms while looking at Chu Luyue. She lowered her voice and asked worriedly, Luyu, do you feel that something is wrong? Song wouldn't act like this for no reason. Seems a little uneasy. Chu Luyue followed the golden mane bear cub's gaze and frowned. She had seen xuanhuan escape before, so she wasn't shocked when she saw this. But the golden mane bear cub did look a little strange. Could it be, because of the 9th grade fiend that was about to break through? Thinking of this, Chu Luyue shouted in her heart. Dumpling. As soon as she said that, a red shadow appeared in front of her. Tuanzi blinked its round eyes and looked at the golden mane bear cub in Mu Hongyu's arms. It was deep in thought. Then it jumped into Chu Luyue's arms. Then Chu Luyue easily caught its tail. With a gentle tug, the claws that had just reached the coat were forced to let go. Don't learn good things. Chu of a hand of Tsong of her. Dumpling, which was hanging upside down in her arms, also swayed. We're both fiends, but why is there such a big difference? It just missed its master's embrace. The guy next to it was so big, but its master didn't even dislike it. On the other hand, it couldn't even touch a strand of its master's hair. Comparing beasts really makes beasts angry. Looking at Dumpling's watery eyes, Chu Luiyue was indifferent. She asked, "Do you feel that something is wrong?" Dumpling was stunned. It hugged her wrist and turned around. Then, it obediently squatted on her hand and turned to look at xuanhuan, who was moving away. A dark light flashed in its eyes, but it quickly disappeared. Then it scratched its head and looked at Chu Luiyue. It shook its head hard. "Nothing. Look. Xuanhuan over there is moving too." A voice came from the crowd. "And over there. Oh. It seems like all the trees here are moving." It was Unknown who had shouted. The whole group was silent for a moment. Chu Luiyue looked around and her expression turned serious. As expected, all the xuanhuan around her were moving quietly. The key was that they were moving in different directions. At a glance, it was extremely chaotic. Chu Luiyue had seen such a situation before. But that time, only one area of xuanhuan moved, and they were all moving in the same direction to avoid danger. But now, Dumpling climbed onto her shoulder and obediently curled into a ball. It seemed to unintentionally glance at the golden mane bear cub. The golden mane bear cub seemed to have felt something. It gradually calmed down and leaned into Mu Hongyu's arms. Mu Hongyu saw that it had finally calmed down. She calmed it down and coaxed it for a while before finally letting it go back. She said uncertainly, "It was probably shocked by the 9th grade fiend just now." Chu Luiyue knitted her brows slightly as an ominous feeling rose in her heart. "Vice Admiral Mu, what's going on with these xuanhuan?" When xuanhuan saw this, she panicked a little. Mu Qinghe's expression was serious. The last general has never encountered such a situation before. Xuanhuan's expression was a little ugly. Her tone was a little sarcastic. "Vice Admiral Mu, you've been in Dahuang Swamp for 10 years and you've never seen this place? It seems like you don't know this place that well." Mu Qinghe's brows moved slightly. Her voice was a little cold. "Dahuang Swamp is vast. Other than this mystic forest, there are many other dangerous places. The last general led the army to quell the rebellion. Wherever the enemy is, we will fight. Naturally, it's impossible for us to stay in one place and not move. But the last general dares to say that no one in the Tianling dynasty is more familiar with this place than the last general. If the last general has never seen it, then it's even more impossible for the others to have seen it." Xuanhuan was embarrassed by her words. Her face was red and white. Sensing the various gazes from the surrounding people, Xuanhuan only felt embarrassed. This consort was just asking casually, "Vice Admiral Mu, why do you have to be like this?" She only said one sentence, but Mu Qinghe refuted her so much. And in front of everyone. He really didn't take her seriously. Jiang Yuqing frowned and looked at Xuanhuan disapprovingly. They had to rely on Mu Qinghe for this trip. She actually questioned his ability at this time. Wasn't she just looking for trouble? Mu Qinghe had been fighting here for several years and had experienced life and death. To him, these words should be the most serious humiliation. "That's enough, one. Vice Admiral Mu won't lie. Since he said that he hasn't seen it, it can only mean that this matter is indeed strange. It's very likely that there's a 9th grade magical beast trying to break through there. Don't be too calculative. The most important thing now is to find that 9th grade magical beast, isn't it? If we're late, won't all our efforts be in vain?" Jiang Yuqing came out to smooth things over. At the mention of the 9th grade magical beast, Xuanhuan finally swallowed the anger in her heart and continued to walk forward. She had to hurry. After all, the force stored in her body was constantly being depleted. "Your Highness, the situation is chaotic now. Please don't be rash." Mu Qinghe had just opened his mouth when an angry roar suddenly came from afar. Crack. The ground under everyone's feet instantly cracked. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 689. Protect Her Highness. Elder Qiushi reacted very quickly and shouted loudly. The people around them, especially the black cavalry, rushed over. But even though they were fast, the ground cracked even faster. Ravines quickly spread out. Everyone scattered and fled. Even so, some people still fell into the cracks in the ground. The whole team immediately fell into chaos. Many of the slower xuanhuan also couldn't escape the fate of falling into the cracks. Looking at the many broken or even disappearing xuanhuan, Chu Luiyue finally understood why they fled in such a hurry just now. Crack. A muffled sound was heard. Chu Luiyue looked down and saw a crack spreading rapidly from her feet. Dumpling suddenly jumped up from her shoulder and ran forward. "Dumpling!" Chu Luiyue exclaimed. Then she saw Dumpling passing through those cracks and running toward the depths of the mystic forest. Come back. Dumpling paused, turned around and glanced at her. Then it went inside again. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. Is this Dumpling calling me over? What does it want to do? Chu Liyue didn't have time to think. She gritted her teeth and quickly followed it. Liyu, where are you going? Mu Hongyu only saw a blur before Chu Liyue disappeared on the spot. She looked confused as she followed Chu Liyue's back view and shouted. A cold wind blew past her ears. It turned out that Chang Wanzhou had already followed behind her silently. Hey, Mu Hongyu wanted to call out to them, but she saw that the two of them had gradually disappeared into the distance. She glanced at Yi Ranran. What do we do now? Yi Ranran's eyes widened. Follow them, of course. Before she came, she told the pavilion master and master that she definitely wouldn't be a burden to Lu Yu and Wanzhou. Even if what lay ahead was unknown and dangerous, she still had to go. Mu Hongyu nodded firmly. Good. Let's go. After that, the two of them took a deep breath and followed him almost at the same time. In the blink of an eye, the four of them left one after another. At this moment, the forest was in a state of chaos. The ground was filled with crevices and everyone was trying their best to escape. For a moment, no one noticed that these people had disappeared. On the other hand, with the help of Elder Qiushi and Elder Duanmu, Xuanhuan was much more relaxed. After an unknown period of time, the chaotic situation finally calmed down. The ground was covered with gullies that were so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. Some of them were even wide enough to swallow a person. It was a horrifying sight. In just a short while, countless trees were destroyed in the originally lush forest. Many people were injured because they couldn't dodge in time. Broken wood, broken leaves, dust, blood. At first glance, it was a complete mess. Xuanhuan took a deep breath. Her face was still filled with anger and panic. What exactly is going on? Could it be an earthquake? Mu Qinghe frowned. She glanced at the sky that was getting darker and darker. I'm afraid that's not it. If I'm not wrong, this should be caused by that 9th grade fiend. Jiang Yuqing followed Mu Qinghe's line of sight and looked over. What kind of fiend is it? It hasn't broken through to become a divine beast, but it has such powerful strength? It wasn't that he hadn't seen a 9th grade fiend before. Not to mention others, just Shengguan Yu back then had a 9th grade 9-colored heavenly pheasant. But it didn't seem to be this powerful. With just a roar, it actually cracked the ground within a radius of several miles. Shengguan bit her lip. Her emotions were complicated. On one hand she was a little afraid, but on the other hand she also wanted to see what kind of fiend it was. It's already so powerful when it hasn't broken through. When it really becomes a divine beast, wouldn't it be even more unimaginable? Jiang Yuqing unintentionally moved his feet and suddenly felt that he seemed to have stepped on something strange. He looked down. What's this? After sweeping away the fallen leaves and dust, he then saw that he was actually stepping on a thumb-sized tree root? So it's Wan Yeshan's tree root. Jiang Yuqing heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. The commotion just now was too big, and many Wan Yeshan trees collapsed one after another. The tree roots were all exposed outside. He lifted his leg and wanted to kick that tree root away. But the moment his leg touched that tree root, he saw that the tree root suddenly elongated and directly wrapped around his leg. Jiang Yuqing knitted his brows and vaguely felt that something was amiss. He lifted his leg and wanted to break free, but he realized that the tree root was very tightly wrapped around him. Jiang Yuqing's face turned cold and he swung his knife. Choo! That tree root suddenly swung and threw Jiang Yuqing into a deep gully. Yuqing, eldest young master. When the crowd saw this scene, they all exclaimed in shock. Quite a few people rushed over and wanted to pull Jiang Yuqing. But due to the chaos just now, the crowd wasn't close to each other. In addition, things happened too suddenly, so they didn't even have time to do anything. Jiang Yuqing's figure disappeared into that gully. Vice Admiral Mu. What's going on? Questioned Shengguan angrily. But before Mu Qinghe could say anything, he suddenly felt that something was amiss and looked down. His legs were actually tightly wrapped around by the tree root at some point in time. In actual fact, it wasn't just him. Almost everyone present encountered the same thing at the same time. Choo-choo. However, in the blink of an eye, the others were also thrown into different gullies. Even Shengguan didn't have time to say anything before she was directly dragged down by the tree root beside her feet. Very quickly, everyone's figures disappeared into the forest. Then the gullies on the ground slowly closed up. As for the rolling leaf firs that had collapsed and torn apart, they quickly recovered to their original state. A gust of wind blew past and countless fallen leaves piled up. The mystic forest returned to its original state as if nothing had happened. That earth-shattering roar was heard again. Dark clouds rolled in the sky, and the entire forest was dark. A faint red mist began to spread out. Wherever the red mist drifted, the leaves quickly withered and then fell down. In just a short while, the originally lush foliage had all fallen off, leaving only the bare trees. But everything didn't stop. Red mist rose in spirals, and without a sound, the tree branches also withered. Needless to say, the tree trunks curled up and shrunk very badly. At one glance, under the dark sky, the withered trees in this forest actually looked like skeletons baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. It was eerie and terrifying. Dumpling's speed was extremely fast, and she kept running inside. Every time she ran a certain distance, she would turn back to look at Chu Luiyue to make sure that she was following her. Then she would continue to move forward. Chu Luiyue followed closely behind like this. Dumpling was fine just now. It was only when the ground began to crack that she suddenly became strange. The more she went in, the more Chu Luiyue was sure of her guess. Dumpling really wanted to take her somewhere. Looking at Dumpling's nimble figure, Chu Luiyue's heart was filled with doubts. How could Dumpling be so familiar with this mystic forest? Digression, it seemed that the update system had gone crazy again. She didn't know if these chapters could be displayed normally. Continue at 6 p.m. Mobile users who want to add more chapters, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Although the forest was dark, if one looked carefully, they could still see the outlines of the trees and leaves. It didn't make sense that so many people couldn't see them. The most terrifying thing was that those people had disappeared without a trace. If she hadn't inadvertently turned around to take a look, she probably wouldn't have known that such a big thing had happened. Chu Luiyue pulled her over and comforted her. Don't worry. That should be the miasma in the mystic forest. The miasma is extremely poisonous and can cause people to hallucinate. The miasma has already spread in this direction. Maybe what we're seeing now isn't the real scene. Yuranran felt a little relieved. Really? Chu Luiyue gave her a reassuring look and patiently persuaded her. Think about it. We're all fine. There are so many of them. How could anything happen to them? Not to mention the elders and the disciples of the sect, just the Black Cavalry alone is extremely strong. With Vice Admiral Mu leading them, they should be fine. Hearing this, Yuranran felt that it made sense and couldn't help but believe it more. Mu Hongyu looked at Chu Luiyue with a hint of worry in her eyes. Chu Luiyue shook his head calmly. No matter what, this place is very dangerous now. We have to leave as soon as possible. When it's safe, we'll think of a way to meet up with those people. Yuranran was very convinced by Chu Luiyue and quickly nodded in agreement. With Chu Luiyue around, she felt like she had a pillar of support. The only thing she could do now was to try her best not to cause trouble. Seeing that Chang Wanzhou and Mu Hongyu next to her seemed calmer than him, Yuranran felt guilty and blamed himself. I'll listen to Luyu. Chu Luiyue finally looked up. The countless withered trees in the shadows were like human-shaped skeletons, screaming and groaning in pain. She hid the emotions in her eyes and turned to continue chasing after Dumpling. Let's go. The few of them were extremely fast and the wind whistled in their ears. As Chu Luiyue ran forward quickly, she thought about everything that had just happened. The red fog was miasma, but it was not just miasma. She had been to the mystic forest before. Generally speaking, miasma would only appear in the forest in the evening. But now not only was the time wrong, but the color was also wrong. The real miasma was pale white, no different from ordinary smog and not this strange red color. Moreover, she had never seen those trees in such a state. If they had been there just now, Chu Luiyue looked up at Dumpling in front of her and frowned. Could it be that? Dumpling knew that something like this would happen, so she deliberately led them away? But how did Dumpling know? It even knew where to run to. Chu Luiyue had long known that Dumpling was different from ordinary blood ferrets, but only now did she realize that she seemed to have underestimated it. Perhaps it was because the scene just now was too impactful, but for the next period of time the few of them remained silent. No one spoke and they just moved forward at full speed. Even if they did not turn back, they seemed to be able to feel the invisible chill approaching. After an unknown period of time, Dumpling stopped again. This time it did not continue to move forward. Chu Luiyue rushed to Dumpling's side in a spurt of energy. Chang Wanzhou and the others followed closely. After standing still, Chu Luiyue realized that there was a small stream flowing in front of Dumpling. It squatted on the shore obediently. Dumpling. Chuluiwe called out to it. Dumpling raised its head and jumped onto her shoulder. Then it raised its paw and pointed at the stream. Chuluiwe looked intently and her gaze froze. The stream was sparkling with colorful light. It was incomparably gorgeous. Digression: I had something to do at home in the afternoon, so I'm sorry. The fifth update is about 9 o'clock. To express my apology, I'll update tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.